Disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. The Canadian Copyright Act, Section 29, allows an individual to use copyright-protected materials when creating a new work, such as a mashup, and to post the new work online on a site like YouTube. Fair dealing provision for specific purposes like research, private study, education, parody, satire, criticism, review, and news reporting.
Step up, step up! Yeah! We pledge! We pledge! We pledge! We pledge! Yeah! Step in the arena, mind locked and loaded. Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreat. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreat. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Step back, I'm a scholar and a fighter. Every claim you throw, I strike tighter. Logic and power, I never fold. In the war of words, I'm solid gold. Raise your fist, let them know. Whoa. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Every thought a fortress, every claim a storm. We forge a truth where chaos takes form. Ideas ignite like lightning through the night. In the war of minds, we bring the light. Step in, feel the heat. Truth is my weapon, never beat. Raise them high, break the ceiling. With a fire, with a feeling. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason.
Welcome, everybody, to Swords of Reason right here on the Speakeasy Show, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. This is where logic meets passion. All right, if you're new here, the format is simple. Each debater gets 10 minutes for their opening statement, followed by 5 minutes of uninterrupted rebuttals. After that, we're going to enter the arena for a full hour of back and forth debate. That's where the arguments clash and the iron can sharpen the iron. And after that, finally, we will each side will deliver a 5-minute closing statement to lock in their case. When that's done, we move into the 30-minute Q&A. I'm going to put the Q&A in the chat for you guys, but keep in mind, Super Chats, PayPals, Cash App, these questions and comments will get priority. And if they fill up the entire 30 minutes, the free chat questions may not get answered. So if there's something you want guaranteed to be asked, make sure you send it through one of those priority options. And once the formal debate wraps up, we open the doors for the Chaos and Chill panel. This is where the community can hop in, ask follow-ups, or challenge the debaters if the debaters choose to stick around, because that part is optional for them. But it's always where things get wild, regardless of what happens, right? So it's always a fun time. Today's debate prompt is: Christian nationalism is beneficial for society? And for the affirmative, we have Stepfire, who operates right at the crossroads of debate and news commentary. In a world where a lot of people are comfortable reacting to headlines from the sidelines, Stepfire prefers to jump directly into the conversation, whether it's politics, culture, or the latest story lighting up the internet. Stepfire is known for breaking down the news, offering his perspective, and not shying away from debating those views in a live debate. And you can find his channel linked in the description below. And for the negative, we have Lethe Water Kai. a creator known for running streaming panels, laid back, chill content for your enjoyment. But don't get it twisted, because behind the smooth atmosphere is someone who's no stranger to diving into hot topic discussions and debates when it's time to get real. And you can also find his channel linked in the description below. With that being said, we're going to move right into the opening statement. So, Step Fire, whenever you're ready for your opening statement, just jump in and I will start the timer up with your voice.
Alrighty. Well, it is good to be back. It is good to see you all. Thanks, Easy, for hosting. And thanks, is it Lathe?
Lethe.
Or Lethe? Lethe? Appreciate you stepping in. I know it was last minute. You didn't get to prep. So, with that being said, scene, late 1700s. Powdered wigs are in, English tea is gay, and every colony claims God's favoritism. Massachusetts runs Puritan Disneyland, where fun is only allowed on Sabbath, maybe. Virginia's an Anglican country club with Primo Tobacco, and Pennsylvania Quakers, well, they found out how to turn silence into a blood sport. They all quote scripture but bicker over winning verses, yet these theological brawlers unite to birth a nation. The founders breathed Christianity like fish breathe water, rejecting moral chaos for ordered liberty rooted in a faith-filled people. When they stitched 13 religious states into one flag, faith wasn't optional. It was the operating system. Data still proves it. Church-going Christians outlive, outbreed, and out-happy secularists, while godless experiments tank fertility, spike suicides, and swap family for Netflix and SSRIs. Christianity is the tree that bore freedom's fruit. Uproot it and liberty wilts. Christian nationalism isn't forcing pews on skeptics. It's owning that our Christian moral core forged history's greatest nation. As Adams famously said, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. The prompt tonight: is Christian nationalism beneficial for society? In my case, is rather straightforward. Yes, because everyone benefits. This is how I am defining Christian nationalisms for the purpose of the debate. Christian nationalism is the advocacy that America's public life, laws, and institutions should reflect the moral and cultural principles of Christianity, not as a coercive state religion, but as the historical foundation that produced our liberties, sustains social health, and aligns with the self-evident truths of human dignity and ordered liberty assumed by the founders. We will start with the obvious, the demographic survival. Here is math that you can only ignore at our peril. We are dying out. Secular fertility rates hover at 1.6 children per woman across Europe. Japan is at a 1.3 and South Korea is fucked at a 0.8. But which means they're not going to be around much longer. But how are the Christians that live out their faith? Church-going Christians consistently hit 2.5 plus. This isn't mere coincidence, it's conviction. Christianity teaches that family is sacred, that children are a blessing and a duty, and marriage is covenant. The current trend is to treat procreation as optional lifestyle add-ons that then panic about needing mass immigration to make sure that we have people to scrub our toilets and pick our strawberries. Christian nationalism reverses this by renormalizing Christian family values in legislation. Society without people won't survive. Christian nationalism ensures we survive without completely uprooting our culture of ethics and dignity due to mass immigration, bringing in people who do not share our values on liberty. But what is better than just surviving? The data is clear. Regular churchgoers live between 4 and 14 years longer than their secular counterparts after controlling for lifestyles. They are also 20 to 30% less depressed, half as likely to commit suicide, and report higher life satisfaction. Why? Because Christianity offers purpose, community, and discipline. Without these, you get the loneliness epidemic that secularism has given us, with 40% of young adults reporting no close friends. Meanwhile, SSRI profits are exploding. Post-disaster, churches are able to mobilize much faster and effectively than FEMA because faith communities pre-existed the crisis. Christian nationalism helps build this with public health campaigns rooted in virtue, not just pills or Ozempic. Schools teaching resilience through biblical wisdom and laws protecting the Sabbath rest over the 24/7 grind culture. This is secularism's fatal flaw. It can't even justify itself, let alone its Christian borrowed principles: human dignity, rights, and equality, These all stem directly from the Christian understanding of Imago Dei. This is that every human being is made in the image of God and therefore is infinitely valuable. It is through this understanding that slavery was abolished and racism is seen as abhorrent. Without God, you're left with Darwin, value, utility, and survival of the fittest. Secular regimes slide into eugenics, euthanasia, and redefining personhood on a whim. With Christianity, justice is anchored in the Ten Commandments, and the result, the Bible Belt shows 20 to 30% less violent crime and higher trust metrics because a shared moral code binds society. Christian nationalism means laws echo love thy neighbor. Courts uphold covenant marriage, and education rejects relativism that teaches kids that truth is subjective. Stronger families mean stronger economics. Christian cultures have 50% lower divorce rates and fewer single-parent homes, which has direct downstream effects on crime and poverty, and cuts juvenile delinquency by 70%. That includes recidivism rates, and this is also true among prison inmates are far more likely. I think it's like 8% compared to an atheist in prison is going to be something like 68, somewhere around there, percent more likely to offend. This boosts workforce stability and helps ease the federal burden of welfare costs, which are vastly more effectively handled by local churches and charities. Churches don't just preach, they deliver. In 2012, a Connected to Give study found congregations provided about 90% of social service episodes in sampled communities. This is food services of food pantries, shelters, counseling. All of this stuff is done usually through unpaid labor. Through volunteer armies, governments can't match. Christianity drives volunteerism with billions in unpaid labor yearly. Christian nationalism would incentivize this. While secularism breeds atomization with gig economies, declining birth rates, tanking Social Security, and endless debt propping up fatherless homes. The Christian work ethic built the middle class, and Christian nationalism will help rebuild it. John Adams nailed it. The Constitution demands a moral people. The free market thrives under an honest populace, and democracies require truthful voters. Christian nationalism protects real pluralism because all thrive under the Christian moral world framework without subjugation or coercion, just as the founders intended. It is the operating system that birthed liberty and allowed prosperity to be obtained by anyone. So in closing, I want you to picture two futures: secular America with empty playgrounds, robot caregivers, and AI deciding dignity, or the revived Christian nation with vibrant churches, full schools with laughing and happy children, and laws guarding the vulnerable because God say they matter. Data, history, and logic converge. Christianity isn't an optional add-on. It is the root system sustaining everything good within our society. Christian nationalism doesn't coerce belief. It calls us back to the moral tap our founders drank from. Secularism offers thirst and irony. Christian nationalism delivers life, reason, and renewal. Society does more than just benefit. It survives. And that'll be my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Lethe. Lethe, whenever you're ready for your opening statement, go ahead and I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to put the ghost of Jerry Falwell back in its place. According to Taking Back America for God by Andrew L. Whitehead, Christian nationalism is defined as an ideology that idealizes and advocates a fusion of American civic life with a particular type of Christian identity and culture. Our first question should have to be, which version of Christian identity would be nationalized? The number of different sects and ideologies under the term Christianity would guarantee even many Christians would be disenfranchised under Christian nationalism. Christianity should just mean the following of the teachings of Christ. Christ taught that his kingdom transcends earthly borders, emphasizing that ultimate allegiance belonged to God rather than any nation. And the goals of Christian nationalism couldn't be further from the teachings of Christ. In the book of Matthew, Christ says, "The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" Matthew also writes, "So in Christ also teaches that his followers should seek to venerate God, not self." A Christian nationalist movement seeks to use God and Christ for their best interests rather than to benefit God or Christ directly. They believe that God is a means to an end, that end being political power and insulation. Christian nationalism is simply a red herring term to cover the fact that they are theocratic fascists. Christian nationalism necessarily believe that America is a Christian nation. However, in early American history, the Treaty of Tripoli explicitly rejects this concept, as the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Yet Jerry Falwell, a Christian nationalist leader, endorses school prayer, religious sanctions, and other types of governmental overreach. He ostracized many groups, such as liberals, communists, secularists, and even other Christians, through the use of force through the state, seeing them as threats to Christian America. His moral panic helped merge faith with nationalist politics, turning Christianity into a political weapon rather than a spiritual calling. This practice continues today through groups like the Heritage Foundation. Jesus rejected the temptation of the kingdoms of the world to serve God, as seen in Matthew 4:8-10, where Satan offers Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in exchange for worship, and Jesus refuses, choosing humble obedience over worldly power. This stands in stark contrast to the power-seeking fusion Falwell promoted. The Seven Mountain Movement, or 7MM, takes this further. It calls for the complete government control of the seven mountains, those being government, education, media, business, arts and entertainment, family, and religion, to create God's kingdom on earth. It promotes top-down societal control, inverting Christian teachings in Mark 10:42-45 that the greatest must be servants. Jesus preached bottom-up transformation through love and service, not conquest or coercion. The Seven Mountain Movement calls for the dominion over society mirrors historical authoritarian regimes, as well as strategies of coordination used to control said mountains and form ideological purity through force. Whether through Falwell's moral majority, mainstreaming political Christianity, or the Seven Mountain Movement's explicit dominionistic blueprint, Christian nationalism portrays Christ's teachings on humility and service, contradicts the founders' clear separation in documents like the Treaty of Tripoli, and exposes the possibility to repeat the authoritarian patterns history has shown. To be Christian is to profess the teachings of Christ and thriving to be more Christ-like. In the words of Jesus, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting, that I might not be delivered over, but my kingdom is not from this world." So I ask, is there a moral thing that a Christian can do that anyone else cannot? And how can you be sure that the Christian nationalism you're pushing for doesn't disenfranchise your brand of Christianity? And with that, I'm going to say, ultimately, everything that you outlined in your opening statement could be achieved through just leading the life that you want others to emulate. You should be showing your fruits, and then people will be doing the same thing. There is no need to have a nationalist movement for that. And I end my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. So that's going to wrap up openings from both sides. We're going to move into the rebuttals. This is 5 minutes uninterrupted for each of you to respond to your opponent's opening arguments. So this is not the back and forth yet. And then when this part's done, we'll get into the open hour. So we're going to hand the mic back over to Stepfire. Stepfire, whenever you're ready for your 5-minute rebuttal, I will start that timer up with your voice.
All right. So he asks, what version of Christianity? It would be the same version of Christianity at the founding. The version of Christian nationalism that I am advocating for isn't at the federal level. I'm not asking for the federal recognition of a Christian nation. The federal government, in my opinion, has far overreached what it was intentionally designed to do, because the original colonies were the ones that dictated what their state religion was going to be. And long after the founding, even, there were state established churches in the early colonies, in America at that time. So this would go back to the states, the federalist position, where the federal government, for the purposes of unity, will not declare a national religion, because that does only breed strife. And it was a compromise originally to get these. That was the whole laying out of my opening statement, was to bring these 13 incredibly diverse Christian states into union. And if one of them was able to take power and subjugate the rest, then no, they're not going to accept to be in a union. So in order to get around that, there is the no establishment clause, so that the federal government is not allowed to establish a religion. I'm all for that. But states, on the other hand, should be permitted to to establish a state religion for themselves, as was intended and took place in the founding of the country. Christian nationalism is not Christ-like. And then he goes on to talk about being charitable and all that. And that was, most of my opening statement was about how the Christian lifestyle leads to charity, more charity and charitable giving. And you get something like a $9 return on investment with every church dollar spent on welfare, versus the federal government, which can range from like 30 cents to the dollar to maybe $3 return on investment. It's so, in other words, the local community, the church, is far, far more effective at doing what it needs to do, because it knows what it needs to be done. It knows these people personally. So I can't imagine anything that's more Christ-like than, being there and loving thy neighbor. Can benefit God. Nothing we do can benefit God. The purpose of this isn't to build God's kingdom on earth. That is not. We're trying to hurdle a bunch of fucking cats into one nation and let it thrive cohesively as technology is gaining. Some civilizations that we looked lasted thousands of years. We just hit 250. So we've got some time to go, and we're already feeling some cracks in the foundation that are unsustainable. American society is not going to exist, and we are the beacon of freedom for the world, regardless of if you disagree with some of the particulars within the country. Even granting all of that, it is still the freest nation in the world. And to lose it as a beacon, we're going to lose freedom in the world. You're going to have Russia and China taking over, and trust me, their version of government is going to be a whole lot worse than whatever Christian nationalists would be bringing in, that are obviously the ones that are advocating what I am advocating for. The Treaty of Tripoli, that was a diplomatic mission with an Islamic state where Christians were being attacked during trade. And the government, the same one that funded missionaries, Congress, signed the treaty stating that there was no federal establishment of religion, which is the truth. There's nothing there is a lie. So this was a bargaining. This was a way to appease the Islamic State while trying to save the Christians that were working over there. So again, it was in effect to protect Christians over in foreign lands. God, Kings, and Order, I covered that. And then I put communism. Because you were talking about that other guy's version of Christian nationalism. And if that's what he wants, then that's what I'm advocating for. And, that you could apply that to it doesn't matter. I'll just leave it there.
All right. Thank you for that rebuttal. And with that, we're going to hand over the mic to Lethy. Lethy, whenever you're ready for your rebuttal, I will start the timer up with your voice.
Okay, so starting off with charitable giving. So it has already been known through a study, I think it was done in Sweden, that shows that Christians are only more charitable when they believe that the funds that they are putting forward, or any charity they are giving, is going to another Christian. But if you look at what is given, the church that gives the most is the Mormon church. So would you say that Mormonism is the greater religion in this particular instance? If we're trying to create a nationalistic identity, do we want this country to be a Mormon country if they are the most generous and giving the most to people? I'm going to say you probably don't. With that on the docket, if it's not going to be taken to the steps of being a countrywide national religion, then why do we need Christian nationalism? Just be a Christian in your own right, do what you think is correct, raise your family correctly, and by the fruits that you show, maybe other people will follow. Be an example to those that you want. That is entirely up to you. I don't think we need to enforce or press or impress upon people that they need to be Christians. Your example should do all the work necessary for that. When you're looking toward other governments, like I like the government we have. I like the way this country was established. I like the laws, rules, and mechanisms of this country, and I don't think it needs to change. We have amendments to the Constitution, we have voting, we have everything we need to keep this country functioning as it has for this entire time. There is no need to interject Christianity into that. While at the same time, you have different organizations trying to enforce the Ten Commandments on the walls of schools where these kids can barely even read them. I don't understand why we're doing that. So it seems like we're putting our focus in the wrong place. Rather than making sure that kids get a better education, we're trying to enforce some value that they don't even understand. So I think we can teach our children just fine what is right, what is wrong, and even teach Bible stories. I have nothing against teaching children Bible stories. They have, children's Bibles, things like that, that you can read to your kids and give them, moral of the story, or you can just go with, what is it? Hans Christian Andersen, fairy tales, whatever you got to do to make sure your kid doesn't go into the Black Forest and get yeeted by a bear. Whatever's going to enforce that is perfectly fine. So then you're looking toward the 1950s, where we wanted to differentiate ourselves in the Cold War against the communist threat. This was the use, as I said in my opening, of Christianity as a cudgel, a weapon to differentiate us against other nations. It does not mean that we are inherently Christian. It just means that we're using that particular authority sphere to fight off something we don't like. The same way we're doing it against Islam right now, which is why I think we're getting an upsurge of Christian nationalism in the zeitgeist. For some reason, the idea that Muslims are going to be problematic, and I don't see why we, by the same metric that you're using for Christian nationalism, it couldn't be Muslim nationalism. If you just remove all the bad parts and take all the good parts, then what seems to be the issue? So I would like to hear your answer as to why that differentiates. I still need to know what moral things that a Christian can do that anybody else cannot do beyond tithing, because why would you need to do that? And with that, I yield my time.
All right. Great rebuttals from both sides. Before we move into the open hour of back and forth, just got to talk to the audience real quick. If you're watching right now, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and also subscribe to tonight's debaters. Their links are in the description, and we host all kinds of debates here on Swords of Reason, politics, culture, ethics, religion, internet topics, anything where reasoning and passion can collide. So if you enjoy the format, make sure you stay locked in because we have a lot more coming for you. Also, a reminder for the live chat. After the closing statements, we'll be doing a 30-minute Q&A. I've already put the Q&A there in the chat for you, but remember the super chats, PayPals, Cash App, questions and comments, they will get priority. So if they fill up the whole 30 minutes, we may not get to the free chat questions. So if you have something you really want answered, send it through one of those options and we'll make sure that it gets asked. And finally, thank you to both our debaters for being here tonight and bringing your perspectives into the arena. Whenever one of you is ready to start the open floor, just jump right in and I will start the timer up with your voice.
I got one big question. Segregation within the church. If Christian morals are transcendent and come from somewhere or are written on our hearts, why was the church okay with segregating its congregation?
Because men are fallen. So men in any institution are, especially where they have access to be corrupt, that's where you're going to find corrupt people going. This is the same for the government, particularly what the founders were trying to avoid with a strong Christian foundation, building upon that and propagating it into the future. Multiple of the founders said that if we lose our religiosity, you'll not have your freedoms anymore. It's based on a religious and moral people explicitly. And that is it. The Bible is the number one cited document in all of the Constitution, the founding documents. I mean, so there's some like 15,000 founding era documents. So what you can bring up examples of men doing things bad, but that's kind of, the worldview is that we're all fallen and we all do bad things. So I'm not understanding exactly what you're trying to get at with the question.
What I'm trying to get at in the question is, if we're trying to lead with Christian morals, the Christian morals led the churches to segregate and stay segregated up until desegregation, and in some cases even beyond that, to the point where there needed to be a court case to make sure that schools would not be segregated if they were private Christian schools, or they would lose their tax exemption status. So the fact that they
Okay.
needed the government itself to force them to desegregate, I think, is problematic in the idea that Christian morals are a foundation of what we should have in America.
Yeah. Um, I ask the question succinctly one more time, please.
Okay. With the idea that Christian morals are supposed to be the framework and the backbone of what America is, if you look to the church for Christian morals, they were segregated.
Oh, and then they segregated. Okay. Yes. Okay. So, well, Christianity has a neat built-in mechanism that it's self-correcting. So over time, we actually see moral progress. We don't see moral degradation. Not until you start secularizing everything and removing God from everything do you actually start seeing the degeneracy start picking up in society. So, I mean, that's basically
So
yeah.
what is your definition of secularism?
It is basically just not appealing. Basically, it attempts to be like a neutral arbiter. So it's not. It doesn't take into account religious affiliations, or it's not supposed to anyway. But it just means removing God, removing religion from public life.
I would say that is pretty much correct. It's mostly in using governing without the bias of Christianity, because anything that you can explain in Christianity but can't explain through secular means doesn't have the weight that it should. Anything that you're enforcing through governmental standards should be able to be explained in that way without the need of the Bible to do so.
But aren't the people that are analyzing that through a Christian moral framework that they've been raised in? Like I said, they breathe Christianity like the founders breathe, like the fish breathe water. You don't really understand the effects that it has on you, the play that it has, the movies you see, what's permitted to be in public, how all these things shape who you are. And I forgot where I was going with that.
Okay, so the church itself created secularism in order to make reasonable laws to govern under, rather than trying to use the church rule in itself. We founded this country
What?
as a secular nation. Secularism is a Catholic concept. It's not an atheistic concept.
I don't know what that has to do with anything. It's still removed. If it's a Catholic concept, then the Catholics are wrong.
I mean, that's perfectly fine. If you
I mean,
wanna say they're
and
wrong.
that doesn't even make sense with the whole Roman Catholic Church being the government. So, I'll just accept what you say on that.
Right, they would make
I
secular
even still don't
rulings.
understand the relevancy.
Well, they would extend secular rulings for government itself to make laws under, because if you're in a plurality of people, they're not always going to respect your religion and what's being said. So if you make a rule that's based on religion itself, they will find reason not to follow it. If you can make a rule on its own that will stand without needing to cite the Bible in the process, then you don't have a problem. So if you're trying to enforce what the Bible's rules are saying, how do you implement that in society?
You're talking about natural law. You're talking about you can use reason alone to come to to come to natural law on God and metaphysics and stuff like this. Again, I still don't understand the relevancy this has to Christian nationalism, particularly.
Well, I mean, you seem to have already seeded the whole idea of a nationalistic Christian identity from the top
Mhm.
down. So I don't see where Christian
No,
nationalism is even necessary. You can just be a
no,
Christian
it's not.
in a secular
It's not the
nation.
top down. It's not the top down. Now it would be state dependent, I guess, on how they choose to run their state. But the federal government isn't top downing anything. The federal government is just making sure that these states play fairly with each other so that we can remain united.
So do you
So,
recall how that worked out originally when America had a few different states that had state religions?
I mean, what do you mean?
There was a point in America where there were state religions,
Yeah, yeah,
and that ended.
yeah. 1833, I think, was Massachusetts. The last one was Massachusetts.
So why didn't we just continue that if it was beneficial to the nation?
What? Why didn't we continue it? Because it was beneficial to the nation?
If it was beneficial to the nation, why didn't we just continue to allow state religions?
I mean, why doesn't the crack addict just stay off of crack if it's good for him to stay off crack? I don't understand.
What aren't you understanding? So having state religions put them at odds with the government itself, to the point where letters had to be written. Yeah, there were letters written, like the letter to the Danbury Baptist Church from Jefferson himself.
Yeah, Jefferson. Yeah. Where he was saying that the state's not going to meddle in church affairs and that the church shouldn't meddle in state affairs.
Bingo.
Speaking specifically about the federal government.
And that's the way it should be. I agree with that. I mean, I don't
Jefferson
like
Jefferson
tax
was
exemption.
Jefferson was the governor of Virginia, and as governor and the drafter of the Declaration of Rights for Virginia, wrote in that I probably should read the quote because it's let's see if I can find it real quick. It's stated that all men are equally entitled to the free exercise of religion, but qualified it with the Christian forbearance, love, and charity towards each other. So this was not him. This was not him saying that Christians couldn't be in power or that the state couldn't have a church. This was him saying that the church needs to stay out of federal affairs in order to keep the unity between the states.
Right. And so you're admitting that there would be disunity between the states if they kept state religions.
No. If they tried to enforce a federal religion, that is where the friction would come in. That is the entire purpose. That's the entire compromise within the First Amendment, the No Establishment Clause, that because they had their delegates come and talk, and they all said no because there was no establishment clause. So federally, because you had, like in the opening statement, you had the Quakers and the Anglicans, you had this incredibly diverse group of Christians. None of them wanted the other guy in power. That is what the entire system is built on. And that's how it's supposed to operate. So the people in charge, the federal government, is not to decide what denomination is the established religion, because then that would be the original colonies wouldn't agree to the ratification of the Constitution and wouldn't have formed the Union. The First Amendment was a compromise to get them to form the Union. They did nothing about state churches. That came later, long after ratification.
Right. And so the state religions, or the state religions were abolished to protect religious freedom, to prevent government corruption of faith, and especially to stop violent conflicts between religious groups. If you were to have the way you want it, each state would have their own religion. We'd be warring over those religions as we speak.
Well, where's the Mormons fighting? They have a whole state to themselves. They ain't fighting the denominations around them. What are you talking about?
But they're not a state religion.
Well, I mean, that's debatable.
I mean, it
they
is
own
absolutely debatable.
most of the government, but
they're
It's just
not they're not established as a state religion. They can function just as any other
no,
religion
I
could.
agree.
But in the early Americas, we had significant conflicts that were driven by established state religions, with the colonies like Massachusetts, southern colonies, often persecuting their dissenters, and the Quakers and the Baptists had to enforce religious uniformity.
This all happened pre colonization. I'm not colonization, but unification. This was all happened before the establishment of America as a nation.
Right. And that's why,
Post it did happen, but almost none, and then it tapered off to not happening at all.
right.
So it was a stabilizing force, not a destabilizing force.
I would say the law was the stabilizing force, not having the state religions in itself. So I don't see where that's going to
Well,
be cohesive, tenable, or even beneficial for America to do any of that.
it was the idea the founders had at the founding of the nation, and it lasted for almost 60 years before the final established church was disestablished, so to say.
So are are you able to guarantee that if things went the way you want them to go, there would be no infighting, there'd be no conflict between the states, there'd be no people getting ejected from states for not being involved in the religion or committing some crime against the religion for whatever reason? Because each of
Well, that's
these
a
religions
well that
have different beliefs and different structures that are in conflict with one another.
sure. Yeah, I mean that's up to the states. But there's the whole state project is tiny little nations, tiny little experiments of democracy, all under one federal government. So again, it's still right in line with what the founders intended.
You're proposing more tribalism, and the tribalism divides the country more than it brings the country together. Why do you think adding
I'm
more
not.
tribalism is going to be beneficial for the United States?
How is it adding tribalism?
So if you just have a church that you go to, that's just your church. It's not a big deal. If it's your state that is that church, it creates a level of tribalism against another state that runs a different church.
Okay, so
So
on the
then there'd
local
be a
level,
union
you can have
between,
your churches, but as soon as you uh, put that as in the state hands, now all of a sudden there's going to be issues between churches.
yeah, there's going to be multiple
They
conflicts
can
among
live right down.
churches.
They can live right down the street from each other. You never hear of Episcopalians going up and decking Anglicans just out of nowhere. There's no slap videos of this going around. Mormons fucking beating people with their bicycles, because they're a Jehovah's Witness. What is this?
Yeah,
Christians, we
essentially.
live perfectly peaceful along with each other today.
Until it becomes a state issue and they start persecuting and dissenting against a church they don't agree with. So the same as if there was a Mormon church in a state that's a Baptist run state, the Mormons are going to catch heat no matter what because it's a state religion.
Well, I mean that maybe that's up to the state. I mean, you're
So
just
you're willing
just
to allow for
assuming.
that?
Well, no, you're just assuming that as soon as the Baptists take over the state, that they're just going to start persecuting Mormons. Well, what is this based on?
It already happened in American history where there were warring religions based on the state. It wasn't
Yeah,
just local level
slavery
churches.
happened, and all types of bad shit. Good shit happened in the past too. Again, that's
Yeah, and ultimately
there's
it's the
nothing.
state itself or the federal government that puts an end to that.
Well, yeah, the federal government would maintain the unity.
Which is secular.
The federal government, you can call it secular, but it's obviously heavily informed by Christianity. You can't separate the moral foundation from under the building. You can't just rip the foundation out and then expect the building to continue staying and continuing to use the language borrowed from the Christian ethic, from the Christian understanding.
So what in the
You can't
founding of
get out of that.
America, what are you talking, can you give me an example of something Christian that is foundational to America?
something that is foundational to America. Well,
Yes.
Imago Dei, the full realization of Imago Dei, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Okay, that's not Christian. You could say that we're made in God's image, but all the same,
Who are they talking about?
definitely not black people.
Well, yeah, but who else were they talking about? If they weren't talking about the Christian God, who were they talking about?
They weren't talking about any God. They were talking about a deistic, nebulous idea of a possibility of a creator. There was no
Is
specific God named. There was no framework put around it.
No, Jesus is explicitly mentioned in multiple state constitutions, the same ones that were brought into the Union and were not unconstitutional. So Jesus is explicitly invoked, the creator of the universe being God. These people were Christian, all of them. I think it is Franklin is your best bet for someone who's a deist, but he was praying out in public and invoking Christ's name. Well, that doesn't sound very deist to me. That sounds very Christian-like to me. So even the examples you can point to of deists, when you look at the things they say, the evidence suggests that they're not deists.
I don't.
So then all these Christians come together and like, well, we're not going to talk about the Christian God when we talk about God. We're going to talk about the generic God.
So you got Thomas Jefferson who said Christianity neither is nor ever was a part of the common law. And he also took a Bible and
No, it just developed common law.
and he cut out all the miracles and spiritual stuff that's in the Bible. So he just kept the words.
Yeah, in his later years.
So then you got Benjamin Franklin, who was a deist. You have Thomas Paine, who
so they say,
not a
but
Christian.
I can pull quotes that show that he's not a deist, unless he could be lying, But a deist believes in a generic God and that there's no way he doesn't perform miracles or intervene with the universe or mankind in any way. He started the clock and then just walked away. That's what a deist believes. So to invoke anything Christian means you cannot be a deist.
So
you're invoking Christianity.
To my understanding of the writings of Ben Franklin, he doubted the divinity of Jesus Christ and proclaimed himself to be a deist. So if you just don't agree with the man and what he said he believed, that's entirely up to you, but that's his writings.
I'm operating off of the definition as it's presented today. Maybe they had a different understanding of what a deist was back then, but by our verbiage, by our definition, he was not a deist, definitionally. So the
self-described
people you can point to the most, maybe there's plenty of self-described Christians who are not Christian. There are plenty of self-described all sorts of things that are not that thing. How many people did you know are racist who say they're not racist? People self-describe as many things. That doesn't mean shit.
That's perfectly fine. If you want to refute what he himself proclaimed himself to be, we have more. John Adams rejected the Trinity, so that's an issue with a lot of Christians, and he definitely didn't have a bend toward he had a bend toward using a rationalist approach to faith in itself. So he was not traditional Christian. You got George
most
Washington.
of them were Christian rationalists.
Yeah, you got George Washington, who didn't like mentioning Jesus. He did not I believe he was also considered deistic, but there's no writing in specific to say that he was. But same thing with James Monroe, who was also aligned with deism. So you have multiple founding fathers that did not follow the Christian traditions, or if they followed them, it wasn't in an orthodox way.
Nobody said anything about orthodox, traditional.
Well, I'm not using the word orthodox as in like.
Yeah, I understand.
But like,
I was using it for traditional, Catholicism, Presbyterian, I believe, is considered traditional, and Eastern Orthodox.
I'm just going orthodox, unorthodox. That's literally how I'm meaning.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, they were. Most of the country was unorthodox, so they all had. Again, we're going back to the diversity and having to bring them together. How do you bring together these incredibly diverse people so that they're not warring anymore? And that's exactly what they did with the federal government, the No Establishment Clause. But as far as George Washington, I have a quote here. While we are zealously performing the duties of a good citizen and soldiers, we certainly ought not be inattentive to the higher duties of religion, to the distinguished character of patriot. It should be the highest glory to add the more distinguished character of Christian. That's just him saying that what is better to be a patriot is a Christian patriot. That is George Washington, the father of our nation, himself. He was a complicated man. So some of his dispositions with how he conducted himself in public life, he believed trying to be incredibly stoic and all of this. And so, there was some there's a lot going on in George Washington as to why he wasn't incredibly open. But if you read through his stuff, he talks about God, he talks about Christ, he talks about all these things. He also says of all the dispositions and habits would lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that man claim that the tribute of patriotism, who should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness. So he's saying that if you are trying to undermine this, then you are no patriot. And what is the ideal patriot? The Christian patriot. So that's just one of them. As far as Franklin, here's this quote. Sorry to quote bomb you here, but last one, I promise. Here's his quote that kind of made me question whether he was a deist by today's standard of what a deist is. I have lived a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. That is explicitly anti-deist, because deists believe that God does not interfere with the affairs of men. He says that God governs in the affairs of men. Without his concurring aid, we shall succeed in this political building no better than the builders of Babel. So you can say he's a deist, but he's explicitly referencing the Christian Bible, the Tower of Babel, saying that if we dispense with this essential foundation, the pillar on which this nation is built, then the whole thing is going to come crashing down.
So two things. First off, a lot of us are indoctrinated and ingrained initially with the language, terminology, and visualization of religion, depending on whatever religion you were indoctrinated with to begin with. Theirs were more like Anglican, things like that. So to use that sort of terminology in writings, like even me as an atheist, use religious terminology and phraseology when I write music or poetry. It doesn't mean I believe in it. It's just taking a term that people can understand and putting it into a place where people can visualize it. But the primary question I want to ask is, if this is the case, why didn't the founding fathers explicitly align the nation under Christianity if it's what they actually intended? Or were they unable to?
It was aligned within Christianity. Again, the federal government was just the binding of these states. The states themselves were the Christians. The federal government was to be made up of people from those states. Well, who were the people from those states? They were Christians. So it was just, it just logically follows that the people that you're going to get in federal office are going to be Christians, and they're going to govern accordingly. They can't, again, establish religion once they get there, because you don't want one state that has a higher population to get more representatives in there and then establish a federal religion, because that breaks the entire union. It breaks the compromise. So we're going back to why the No Establishment Clause was put there.
So with that being the case, if they wanted us to be united through Christianity, why did they intentionally separate the church?
We just went over this like 4 times now. The No Establishment Clause was a compromise in the No Establishment Clause in the First Amendment that says that Congress shall make no laws prohibiting the free exercise or establishing a religion. I can't remember the Congress shall make no laws establishing a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Something along those lines. That was the compromise that without there would have never been an American nation. We would have still been states that would have tried to develop in our own little nations. And in order to bring these diverse Christians together, there had to be a compromise. Well, look, we're all Christian. All right. You may not agree what a Christian is, but we're cool here. We agree on the baseline. Let's just stick with that. Don't go get in other people's business. We can make it work. Now, it didn't sound like that at the founding. They made that shit sound fancy. They were all educated as a motherfucker. They were always referencing shit that you and I will never read because they had classical educations. And so they sounded a whole lot more fancier when they were putting all this shit together. But that was what the First Amendment or the no establishment clause within the First Amendment was a compromise to get these states to unionize.
So did they feel it was just too redundant if it was just going to work that way, or they just chose not to write it in that way?
They chose not to write it in that way.
Okay. And would that be so that there was no conflict?
Yes.
Then this is a good thing, and I think it's been functioning very well since that happened. So to give you an idea, like in the case that there's a state religion.
So we're not in disagreement there.
No, it's perfectly fine.
Because it sounded like you were disagreeing or not understanding the whole compromise with the state. Because you keep asking, was it to avoid fighting? Yes, it was a compromise to avoid fighting. That's exactly what it was.
But if it was in the best interest of the states to have their religions state run state by state, then they would have left it as such. But knowing that it was going to cause the dissolution of the union,
they did.
Separated it.
They didn't touch a single state constitution, which had blasphemy laws, and you had to swear oaths to Christ in himself in some states. Very explicit. They didn't touch any of that.
I believe you actually can't do that. There can't be a religion test for holding office, which is part of this.
Federally.
I don't believe you can even do it on a state level.
No, they did it on the state level.
But that had to end. You can't do that anymore. There's a reason why you can't do that.
Well, yes, there was developments, a rewriting of history and what the founders intended to build a secular nation. That is not what they intended at all. They intended to build a neutral top on top of a solid Christian foundation. And then the whole point of that top being neutral was so that the foundation wouldn't fracture.
So to get to a minor level, are you aware of the Salem witch trials?
Yes.
Do you agree with the Salem witch trials?
It depends on what you mean. I thought about this earlier, and it was kind of interesting because if just for a moment here, we're going to get into a little silly land. Just for a moment, we got time. Imagine that witches were real. You know, they eat babies and all of this stuff. They cook them up in stews and serve them. And should we not burn them? Or should we still burn them?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I don't believe we should burn people because we think they are witches or practicing witchcraft or anything else.
I'm just saying presuppose that they were actually witches. I'm not saying that they were actually witches.
No, I'm saying even in the case people that they may have actually, as goofy as that is, been witches.
That eat babies? They eat babies. They cook babies.
If you catch a person eating a baby, what do you do with them? Like right now, right here today. You throw their ass in jail. Depending on the state, you might put them on death row, but you don't burn them on the spot.
Well, no witches were burned during the Salem witch trials.
Okay.
Not one.
Tossed in a lake with stones around them. Whatever you want to do, crushed with rocks. However you want to run their execution.
There was one man that was crushed with rocks because he would not take the plea, and there were the rest were guillotined or hanged. It was about 20 people over the period of 1 year. And it was self-corrected pretty quickly if you consider that it was only 1 year. Again, it's just an example of the Christian self-correcting mechanism built within Christianity. These were the people responsible for the Salem witch trials were Puritans, and the doctor who diagnosed the first two ladies said that they were convulsing and all of this, and he said that it was because they had the hand of evil on them, and that's what sparked less than a year of witch trials, which resulted in the deaths of 20 people.
Do you know what ended it?
I mean, not exactly. People coming in and saying no.
It was somewhat on that end. It was the actual, like, it was people from other states, because people were being accused using spectral evidence to name high-ranking individuals that they were going to try to then put on the block.
Well, I mean, if evil men use their devious ways to gain their powers and such, again,
Exactly what Christian nationalism is, and that's what I would like to avoid by all costs. Let's keep that stuff out of the laws. Let's keep that out of the nation to the best of our ability. You can have your church and do your thing.
what are you trying to avoid with Christian nationalism?
I'm trying to
You're trying to avoid witch burning?
I'm trying to avoid all of the spiritual or metaphysical aspects that come along with a religion, because if you can't quantify it through natural
Like
means,
meaning and purpose and
no, that
meaning and purpose.
To each person is their own purpose and their own meaning. You can't assign purpose to anyone, nor can a God tell anybody what the purpose is, because he doesn't talk to anyone.
Well, I obviously disagree.
Okay,
You may
so
believe it.
do you
Well,
believe?
are you an atheist?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So if a person told you that they got a word from God, another person told you that they got a word from God to give to you, how do you know which one's telling the truth?
You don't?
Why?
Because neither one of them can be coming from God.
So what's the point?
What do you mean?
What's the point in even considering it?
Considering what?
That somebody is literally hearing from God or being told something to do.
Oh, why
from
should I
God.
believe? Why should I believe somebody else has heard from God?
Right.
Why should I believe that someone else should believe?
I would
that
like to
they
know
heard
why.
from God?
Yes, I would like to know why.
Because I accept the Christian worldview.
And do you believe that if somebody said, I've been told by God to govern this area using these rules, are you going to just vibe with that?
No, I don't. I'm not understanding this line of questioning, sir.
So you seem to be arguing for state religions, correct?
For states to be able to have their religions, yes.
Well, the states can have their religions, but there is no established state religion.
Well, no, that's what I mean by churches can or states can have their religions.
Yes.
They can establish a church if they so desire.
So
that when it comes to, okay, so I may need to flesh something out a little bit here. When it comes to public life, what I want for the government to do is to encourage things that are beneficial for the society. Things like this would be to have babies, create families, and live and die old together, and all these basic things that we all have taken for granted. And as we start to dismiss, we start to see fatherlessness skyrocket, and people are killing each other at insane numbers when we should be so far past all of that. But as we continue to chop out the foundation of our country, we're watching the degeneracy of our society, people not being as charitable, people not being as nice, people becoming more tribal. Well, that's weird. If Christian nationalism was what was creating the tribalism, then why are we, as we secularize, becoming more tribal?
We're not becoming more tribal. We literally have the main tribes that we have. Whereas for each religion, they may be tribal within their own right. So Christians are at odds with Catholics. They don't agree that they're Christians. And then Catholics are at odds with Mormons. The same thing goes all the way down the line. There are so many different religions that are
this was true. This was all true at the founding.
Yes, and if you put one of those religions at the head of a state, it's going to create conflict, which is exactly the issue that we had in the first place. And we don't
You
want that to
say
continue.
it's going to. You say that it's going to,
Because
but
it
you can't
did.
possibly dim it.
I
No, it
say
didn't.
because it did. It
No, it
actually
didn't.
happened.
No, it did. No, if you look at warring that was happening between the states before the unionization of America and after, you can very clearly see that something happened in that unification period. I would guess that it was the unification part that cut down on the infighting, particularly the violent infighting within Christian communities.
So early
So you're just
state-sponsored
saying that.
religions established churches in colonial America that caused significant conflict and persecution, including the banishment of people that dissented with what the church itself wanted.
Yes,
This is
again,
historical.
this was, yes, and you should understand the context in which it happened. This was all colonial period. This was not the formation of the Union. This was not the founding of our country that this was taking place. You're talking about really early in the history where we were still British colonial, where we're escaping the religious infighting from across the ocean and coming over here, and some of that bleeds over here. And then as time goes on, states begin to form. We start to unionize. Compromises are made. We come together. Infighting stops.
So I'm going to say the unification was not a possibility with state religions doing what they were doing.
What? That's what happened. I don't understand what you mean. That's what happened.
Yes, they had to break up state religions in order to unify the United States.
No, they didn't. They brought together the state constitutions in as they were and were left unchanged by even Jefferson as governor, the guy who wrote the Constitution for Virginia. He had the opportunity to go in and change blasphemy laws, to remove the Christian verbiage from. He didn't do any of that. He did change some laws around taxes, but that was it. So these were incredibly, you can't find a single state constitution that didn't explicitly reference God, the Christian God. Many of them had blasphemy laws, if not all, and most of them required oaths of office. This is after the ratification of the Constitution. After the ratification of the Constitution, these things were permitted and not pushed back on by any of the founders. None of them.
Yet it was eventually made so that this could not be the way it works because it created problems within the Union.
I want to undo that. It didn't create problems in the Union. It resolved problems in the Union. You can't say that it got less violent after unionization and the unionization made it more tribal and violent.
So,
because that's not what happened.
Okay, so essentially here's how it rolls. You have the federal government not being able to have a primary religion, but all the states have different religions or a state church.
Different Christian denominations, yes.
How is the federal government going to deal with each of these churches? Are they going to deal with them equally? Is there going to be a level of favoritism?
You don't have to ask me to in this hypothetical play this out for you how this will work. You just have to look at the history of the United States. That's what happened.
So I'm going to say that ultimately the federal government wasn't going to play favorites with these state religions, and they created laws so that this wasn't going to become a problem in the future to the Union.
I mean, again, I don't disagree necessarily with what you're saying there. Yes, they created the First Amendment No Establishment Clause so that there wouldn't be friction between the states. That's the entire purpose that it was created for. For if they were all the same denomination, if they were all Anglican, they all agreed, then there wouldn't have been any issue with unionizing these states into a single nation. because if they're all Anglican, then that means an Anglican's going to get in power and an Anglican is going to establish a church. Well, that's okay because we're all fucking Anglican. But that was not the hand that they were dealt. You had many, many different denominations of Christians that would not unite if one of them could take power over the other and coerce their doctrine. So again, this is all explicitly written out in the founding documents.
So first we got the colonies persecuting non-believers. Then we got the federal unification under the umbrella of separation of church and state. Then we got the federal government not choosing a team to eliminate friction between state religions. And then we still have that peace today because of the actions that were taken. And you're trying to undo that.
No, what are you talking about?
You're saying you're not happy with that.
I'm not happy. I'm not under. You keep going off. I'm not understanding how this is relevant to how it. First of all, how it's beneficial or bad for society, but I don't understand the purpose of the question. So I don't.
Okay.
I don't know how to answer it properly because I'm not understanding the purpose of the question.
Okay, let's go with some of the rules or some of the ideas that you put out. Blasphemy laws. Do you think blasphemy laws are good?
Yeah, I think they're good.
Does every church in America have the same definition of blasphemy?
Yeah, pretty much.
So a non-Trinitarian church
Well,
believes the same as
no,
a
no.
Trinitarian church?
No, they would. To blaspheme God is to speak bad about God. So that
Right.
is.
So not
So
agreeing with the
there's
Trinity
some-
would fall in line with that, correct?
If you presuppose the Trinity, yes. But if you don't presuppose the Trinity, then the other person would be blasphemous because they're saying that God was a man. So they both see each other as blasphemous, but they still have the same standard of what blasphemy is.
So we have freedom of travel between states. So if you go from one state to another that believes differently than you do, and you say something that they consider blasphemy, you think that's a good thing?
Well, no. Just when you ask broadly if I think that this thing is good, and then you go to apply it to a very specific situation, there's nuance within these things, and I can get into the nuance. But when I say that blasphemy laws, or I don't mind states having their blasphemy laws, an argument can be made that to blaspheme, the only purpose to do that is to upset people, is to rile people up. And if your populace is of a Christian foundation, where most of these people identify as Christian, and you blaspheme God, then the intent there is to upset people. So the argument can be made, whether it's right or wrong. States can figure that out and adjudicate that as they see fit. It will work in places and it won't work in places. It may not work, it may work. Again, this is the experiment of the little 50 democracies that have to play out to see what works the best. Whatever comes out on top is what comes out on top. But this isn't done through the federal coercion on the states to do any particular thing. As far as one person going into the territory of another state and what's not considered there, again, there are going to be protections, obviously, that you have examples of this where you can get licenses from like the United States to Canada, because that would be your basic what you're trying to paint Christian nationalism is after it's all grown up and they're all fascist states of Christianity, their own version of Christianity, and if you say anything against their version of Christianity, and they've got walls built up between each state, I don't see any reason to believe that's feasible in any way. You don't see Christians doing that now, so why would they be doing it later when the understanding and the conviction of Christian ethics has developed to the point that it has? I forgot where I was going with all of that. Oh, the one person going to their states will negotiate between each other, and like the US and Canada, you can get truck drivers get permits where they can drive through both countries without requiring all the specifications for each country explicitly. So
That sounds horrendous.
Well, there's still, these things are worked out through treaties and such. So there's still recommendations. You have to be able to drive and all, there's basic stuff, but maybe you have to get Canada, you have to get inspected differently than you do in America. And if they mismatch, they're not going to fucking ride your ass.
So either way, like let's say you got these state religions, would you want the federal government involved?
As far as what?
Being able to rule over the states in the sense of how the religion is managed.
Well, yeah, the federal government does, as it's laid out in the Constitution. Its sole purpose is to protect people's life, liberty, and property. Is essentially. So, if the states are going in and violating people's lives, liberties, and properties, as laid out in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, then, which that's the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, which was used to over aggressively apply explicit or specific cases of rights violations to the states. And that was a big reason why you started having the federal government actually not playing a neutral arbiter, but pushing religion out of states. That's what it started to do, which was not what it was designed to do. That is one of the things that, in my view, we would go back and change. The federal government would not be allowed to coerce states to push Christianity out or to push religion out. But again, religion in the context of America, particularly the founding, is Christianity, not just any generic, the Buddhists are cool here, the Hindu, we're all cool with it. That wasn't the idea of what religion was to these people. Religion was specifically Christianity. They called it religion to encompass all of the different denominations. And because some people will get offended if you call this thing Christianity, like you were saying, if you call it Christian, and well, these people don't believe it's Christian, and so there was all sorts of compromises made during the founding of the country to get this whole thing to come together and to build what we have today. But we have deviated from the purpose of the establishment of this country. And in doing so, we are watching society start to decay. We are starting to see unnatural lifestyles prop up at incredible rates. You want to talk about secularism, trying to secularize everything. We can't even trust the people from the secularist or the atheist worldview to be unbiased in their scientific findings. With the whole gender ideology craze, that's fucking insanity. The atheists, and they was just sat by and cool with as all these kids are going out and mutilating themselves. They just sat quietly. They're going to wait until all the other nations have to come together and say, "Hey, actually, this isn't good."
I really don't know anything about that, but I would like to get back to the primary thing. So is it a good thing that the federal government doesn't have a religion? Would you consider that a unifying force?
It is. I'm good with how they developed and understood it at the founding.
Okay, so Christian nationalism would not be a unifying ideology under the federal government.
Christianity would be a unifying ideology under the federal government.
So
they would all be Christians.
You want a federal Christian government?
Well, no, the federal government will be made up of Christians who are going to be using the Christian moral framework and operating through it to develop laws and such. So again, this is why that it wasn't necessary for the federal government to explicitly be Christian, because the states were explicitly Christian, and anything that come from the states were going to be voted in by Christians. So they were going to be Christian.
So let's say the federal government was Mormon and all the states were different denominations of other Christian. Would that be a unifying idea?
If the federal government was Mormon, like they established Mormonism as the federal church?
The American religion is Mormonism.
Yeah, no, obviously not. Well, that's not what I'm arguing for.
I fail to understand what you're arguing for then. If the federal government, which would be a Christian nation, if America had a national religion.
Okay. So if you have a sorting mechanism that sorts carrots and potatoes, you never have to expect chopped carrots in your potato soup. It sorts these things out the same way the states sort these out. The delegates from the states have to be voted on by the populace. That populace was Christian. You understand? So the people that go to the federal government are Christian. So you don't need to establish the federal government as a Christian nation and cause the division when you know that the people coming from the states are going to be Christian.
I mean, as long as you acknowledge that it would cause division, I'm perfectly fine with it then.
I haven't, the whole compromise, the whole compromise is what stopped the division. The no federal state, no federal church is what in the First Amendment, that's what stopped the division. It helped stop the division because it helped with the unification of the countries.
I like it.
I don't think you're understanding.
I think I'm understanding just fine. So, to the whole idea of like family units and the whole deal, do you think that could be accomplished without needing religion and just, making sure people had more money, affordable housing? Like, are there some other things that may be causing this decay that you're speaking of?
So we're richer than we've ever been in human history, but we're devoid of purpose and meaning. No, you're not going to get families out of that, as has been demonstrated. But through Christian conviction, yes, people are far richer than they ever were. The poorest are the richest poor that's ever existed.
Yeah, and where's that money going? If you can't afford to buy food, you can't afford to have a kid, even though you're the richest poor person ever, doesn't mean you can afford a kid. Doesn't mean you can afford a house. Doesn't mean you can afford an apartment. Doesn't mean you can afford to have a wife.
But these people somehow do. That's weird. You do have a fringe minority that, because of mostly mental illness, that aren't able to get in there and, keep their life together, so to speak. But poor people make it all the time. Poor people have plenty of kids all the time. You don't need to have a bunch of money to have kids.
And what usually allows for them to pay for their children?
You just have to just look at it historically. That's why I was saying we're richer now than we've ever been, because when we were poor, we were still having kids. We were having way more kids when we were poor. So the correlate would be the richer you get, the less kids you have. So if you wanted to have more kids, you would make them poor.
I'm not talking about being super wealthy. I'm saying like middle class.
So yeah, that's how you can do it without Christianity. Make everybody poor. Yes, that's the secular way to do it. Make everybody poor, and then they'll have a bunch of babies.
Absolutely don't make them poor. All I'm saying is to have like a thriving middle class would afford for people to have more children. Usually the middle class people were having upwards of 3 and 4 kids. They had multiple
strongly associated with their Christian framework.
I don't see what,
and as that's been abandoned, well, if you just look at the numbers explicitly, the birth rates for Christian families versus secular families or atheist families are nowhere near each other. The Christians are replacing themselves. The atheists are dying, demographically speaking.
I don't necessarily see that to be true, but what I'm saying is when people have the ability to afford a home.
Have you heard of the fertility crisis?
From certain people, yes, but it's more so like a replacement thing.
Well, yeah, you have to be able to replace your population. So if you're not having at least 2.1 kids per family, then you're not having enough kids just to replace the population that it took to make the kids. So you have to have more than that. Well, Christians are having more kids, and that number is going up to over 2.5 for Christian families, and it can get as high as 3.3, 4.5. It gets up there depending on the denomination. You start breaking it down.
It's an interesting stat, but okay, so let's use that stat as correlation, causation. Let's just go there. How many kids do you think Muslims are having on average?
They're having a bunch. They have a bunch.
So it's not the Christianity that's doing it. So what could it be?
Well, it's religiosity and how you view kids, whether you view them as a burden or a blessing, whether you view them as something that takes a bunch of money in order to have.
So any religion.
So your understanding of
Christian national, you can just pick a different religion, and the religion that's having more kids would be Islam. So why not be Islam nationalist?
Because with Islam, you end up in theocracy. And theocracy is what I'm trying to avoid.
It seems like exactly what you're trying to usher in.
Iran? You think I'm trying to usher in Iran?
I mean, it sounds like it
Is that
by
what it
you
sounds
trying
like?
to enforce state
Everybody living
religions.
peacefully together?
What?
I'm not trying to force state religions. What are you talking about? I'm trying to do the opposite. Not force state religion or irreligiosity.
Okay, then I think I misunderstand everything you're saying, because you're not trying to establish state
I think you
religions.
do.
You're not trying to establish a federal religion. So this isn't Christian nationalism. This is just, I want to be Christian and I want more people to be Christian. By all means, do your thing.
Well, I mean, that's an incredibly crass way to put it. And if if you want to be uncharitable, that you can sure put it that way. But I'll read again the definition that I'm using in Christian nationalism, so there's no confusion. Christian nationalism is the advocacy that America's public life, laws, and institutions should reflect the moral and cultural principles of Christianity. So when we can talk about marriage, right? This is incredibly controversial with people because the Christian believes that the marriage is covenant, and there is no such thing as a marriage between a man and a man. That's not a possible thing to happen. So yes, the state would, or the federal government would not recognize, or the states wouldn't recognize same-sex couples, because that is against the Christian moral ethic that has been developed over the years,
Why?
over the centuries and decades. Why? What?
Why? What are you drawing that from?
What am I drawing what from exactly? That no gay marriage?
Yeah.
From, well, I mean, the primary source would be the Bible, but it would tradition and scripture. Yeah.
So you can only get married under Christian framework. Otherwise, the state won't
Yes.
recognize your marriage. So
Yes.
Indian people can't
Well,
get married in America. Muslims can't get married in
Yeah.
America. All these different people cannot get married in America.
Exactly. Now there are, for purposes of governance, there are you can have civil unions for these things, but civil unions would not be enforced the same way that a covenantal marriage would be.
Sounds like you're trying to rip America apart, because there are multiple religions in the country that should be recognized.
America's doing that itself. It's doing it itself right now. And that is as we leave Christianity, as we get further and further from the cultural roots of Christianity, as we abandon the precepts that were assumed at the founding of this country, we are seeing degradation.
So if we're to be united as Christians, should only Christians be citizens? Or like, how far is this going to go?
No, I don't. That's not necessary.
But if you're going to disenfranchise other religions, or people that are practicing other religions that come to this country,
I'm not disenfranchising people. I mean,
you're
people
telling them
can
they can't get
publicly.
married.
I mean, well, yes, because marriage has a definition. You can't be a married bachelor either. It's just a contradiction in terms. It's a different understanding of what marriage is. Marriage is between a man and a woman. That's what marriage is, and it is ordered for the purpose of procreation. So that is what a marriage is. So anything that is outside of that couldn't even possibly be defined as a marriage.
I'm just saying the vice president wouldn't have been able to get married in the way that he did under the framework that you're outlining.
Okay, you can have a civil union.
Right on, my dude. That does not seem beneficial for society at all. I think we're a melting pot. I think there are multiple ideas that have made this country the greatness that it is today. And I'm sorry you feel like it's falling apart, but I feel like it's thriving and doing better than ever.
All of them grew from the soul of the Christian moral framework. So all those great ideas, all that language that you want to use in order to try to justify anything, which you can't, given the secular worldview to begin with, they all come from the Christian ethos. So
all right, well, that wraps up an hour of open floor. So usually I like to offer at the end of the hour of open floor now, just in case there's some iron left to sharpen, just keeping in mind we have the 30-minute Q&A as well. But would you both want another 30 minutes of open floor?
I don't think it's necessary. We kind of circled the drain a bit on that one. But it's up to Stepfire if you'd like to address
Like
something
if
in
there was
particular.
somewhere else you guys wanted to go to with it, like we did talk a lot about like if the founding fathers were Christians. We talked a lot about yeah, I wrote some things down. We talked about like things that happened in history with the Salem witch trials. So if I don't know if you guys wanted another 30 minutes, it's up to you. If you want to go into closings, that's up to you as well. I don't know if like maybe you guys wanted to get into like the
The only place
outcomes
that
of
I,
the implementation or
yeah, that was what basically my stats were pointing to, that Christianity, people who follow the Christian faith, and is evidenced through, at the bare minimum, their church attendance, they outlive secularists. They out happy secularists. They live more fulfilled lives. They have more children. They're able to propagate into the future. While on the other hand, with the secularists, you get more nihilism, or with atheists, you get more nihilism because the end result of atheism is nihilism. Atheists tend to disagree, but that is their own contradiction to work out. The only thing that I could probably get into is basically just presupping his whole use of good and bad, what is good and bad for society, and how under his worldview there is no such thing as good and bad. So how could you ever adjudicate something as good and bad? Everything is just incidental. So again, that's a positive that I would argue in favor of the Christian worldview, is that we can
that's
draw
just
those moral
silliness. We can
lines.
both
That,
agree on things that are good and things that are bad. And if you and I can both agree on it,
yeah, but I can
then it's
justify
consensus.
those things.
I don't think you can.
But I can justify those things.
I don't think you
I can
can.
justify those.
How do you
Yeah,
justify
my
it?
worldview
do
allows.
you
for
want
the
to get into 30 minutes of this then?
It seems like he wants to.
I mean,
If
you
only-
both got to
only
be
if you
open
want.
to it though. So do you
Well,
want to as
this
well?
seems more
Leafy?
like a theological conversation.
It is, or
Over
it's more
is
of a
Christian nationalism
philosophical.
beneficial? And I feel like he already seeded the prompt that it's not even Christian nationalism. It's just some states have religion and it was going to be that way because it's what they want. I'm like, cool, but that ain't Christian nationalism. So
Okay, how about this?
Also not what I laid out.
Let's do it like this. I'm gonna ask a question for both of you. You guys can answer it, and I'll start the timer up. If you guys want to stop it at any time before the 30 minutes is over, you just let me know. If your position won tomorrow, right? Like either Stepfire Christian nationalism or Leafy no Christian nationalism, what would society look like in 20 years?
for me, it would look like the Satanic Panic all the way around.
No, if yours won out, well, I guess it would.
Yeah,
what do you
yeah,
think
yeah.
society is.
If
What do you think
yours,
society would
like,
look
if
like?
you win, sorry, yeah.
Oh, if I win, then it would be exactly as it is right now. We'd be moving forward in the way that we are. People could practice their religion as they choose to, and
Slowly
essentially,
dying off.
I mean, I don't think that's the reality of it, but sure. I think we have more people on the
No,
planet
I mean-
now than we ever have before.
No, it's not an opinion. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm stating an objective fact. If you cannot have enough children to replace the population, your population will dwindle. This isn't. It's not. I'm not using any gotchas here. That's just the way that it is. If you stop having babies, your society dies.
Okay,
You really need to look into the fertility crisis.
quick question.
It's pretty bad,
is
particularly
the
in
global
secular nations.
population expanding or collapsing?
It's expanding. Do you
Then
want to?
what are you talking about?
Do you want to live in India? Do you want to live like Indian culture, or are you cool with the whole rights?
I
and
don't have to. We
equality
can just
and all
have
that?
them come here and do work and be a part of the American project. Then we got more Americans.
And they don't. And these people don't bring in their own ideologies and understandings of human beings and their own cultures. You understand that there's some fucked up cultures out there, and that if you start mass importing these people to make up for your fertility problem, that you're going to end up reshaping the culture of America. You can look at Britain as a clear example of this happening. where they're importing Muslims by a crazy number, and it is not going to be long before Britain is going to be a fucking Muslim majority country. Do you think that they're going to still be the beacons of freedom with a Muslim majority country? How do you think that's working out for them?
Seems to be working out just fine.
Well, you are incredibly ignorant of what the fuck is going on in the world.
I mean, as far as I understand, once you get to the second, third generation of people in this country, then for the most part, they just become Americans. They assimilate out, and there's no issue.
If they are surrounded by Americans, by Christians who govern and shape and mold their cultural understandings, but as you import more and more of the other cultures, well, they're going to build pockets like they do in America here. They build pockets where that culture festers and bad stuff that you would obviously disagree with takes place.
And
And this
so,
expands as their population expands because they continue to replace themselves. While you secularists are all wanting to fight for rights and dying off.
so what you're telling me is the best way to do this is to remove freedoms and the freedom of speech in America. First Amendment needs to be curtailed in order to have better moral frameworks in America.
No, the First Amendment should be used as it was originally intended to be used, not as a cudgel to beat states into submitting to the federal government's whims.
So the issue
That was the founding fathers did not want. You should know this. They were incredibly against tyranny. They hated tyranny. They wanted to avoid tyranny. And how do you avoid tyranny? You don't give the person at the top, the organization at the top, you don't give them enough power to be able to be tyrannical. The federal government was never meant to be able to enforce the way that it has onto states what the federal government believes that should be happening. The founders explicitly built it in such a way that if we were to adhere to the First Amendment as it was written and understood at the time that it was written, not as we have reinterpreted it, then the state religious problem would be a state problem. It has nothing to do with the federal government. The federal government has nothing to do with church affairs, nothing like that. Even though, coincidentally enough, Congress was still funding missionary trips after the founding of the federal government was funding missionary trips and such. So, you know,
I thought that was pretty horrible as well. That was definitely an L for America in a lot of ways.
yeah, we don't want to spread that whole idea that grew freedom and the freedom of religion as you speak. Even as you understand it, wouldn't you want the thing that developed and sustains those ideas? You want to dismiss what created that thing, what sustains that thing, and still hold on to the thing. You want to pick the apple from the tree, chop the tree down, and expect to get more apples from the tree. Well, no, you've chopped the tree down. You've uprooted the thing that produces the fruit you're looking for, which is the rights and the equality. These are all Christian ideas. Every single one of them come from the understanding of Imago Dei.
So by that metric, even though it killed off tons of people through disease and other methods, you want to continue to spread Christianity throughout the world by missionary practices. How about we just bring Africans over here? Since Africa is close to 50% Christian, let's just bring Christian Africans here. Problem solved.
Well, there's a culture that is also involved in this.
Christian culture isn't
So
the
there's-
culture?
It is the dominating culture, but there's other. So we call it the American Enlightenment, which is stemmed from the Enlightenment, which is stemmed from Christianity. So if you don't acknowledge the things that come out of the Enlightenment, as far as rights and human dignity and stuff like this, those Christian nations over there, they don't accept this. They've had a blending of other cultures that have come in. Our culture is a blending of the rationality of the Enlightenment period and the Christian ethos in which the Enlightenment happened. It was the merging of these two things. Our founders are known as Christian rationalists. That's what they were.
Right. And being Christian rationalists, they saw that not using the religion to govern is the best method to get things done. So they removed the religion.
No,
from-
that is the exact opposite. They explicitly wrote that religion was an integral part of the whole system. That if you take out the Christian ethos, the entire system is going to collapse on itself. Because the Christian can, again, with the Imago Dei, we can justify human dignity and we can ground these things in something outside of ourselves. You can't do that with yours because there is nothing to ground it into. It's just preference at that point. You want people to have rights because you want to have rights. So it's no grounding. It's just a preference. So as soon as somebody doesn't want somebody to have rights, well, what's wrong with that? You have no way of adjudicating between what is good and bad except what you like and dislike. So it's
seem to
not
be
good or
black
bad.
holing an entire portion of American history where we just straight up had slaves. So apparently, in a Christian nation, they view that certain people shouldn't have rights and weren't even human beings.
Well, yeah. Remember, I talked about the mingling of cultures, and we had brought English culture, which was rampant with slavery, over here, and then just can you give me a number of how many atheists or secularists were in the top 100 top abolitionists in the country? You care to take a wild stab at how many
I
of
don't
them
really
were
think
not
that matters,
Christian?
because if one thing caused the
No,
problem,
it does matter.
and
Not
the same thing
not
fixes
one.
no, if one thing caused the problem,
Christianity was so Christianity caused the slavery.
Christianity supported the slavery. Yes, it was a key component to how slavery was withheld in America or upheld. So if one
So
thing
then how
helped to create the framework and then it comes back later and removes that framework,
it didn't create? You're saying that Christianity created the framework of slavery?
you know, there was a slave's Bible, you know, that it was preached in the pulpits. This was part of the core value of a lot of
You know that
Christians.
slavery pre-existed Christianity.
I'm
We
sure it
didn't
did.
establish slavery.
In
I know
America,
it did.
yes. In America, yes, absolutely.
All around the world.
I'm speaking specifically
Slavery
for
has been
America. Because like we
Well,
didn't
yes.
end slavery before Britain did.
No. But we did help Britain end slavery. Obviously, we ended it over here. And Britain led the fucking ending of slavery through all of their channels, through the channels and stuff.
So
Barbary
if
pirates.
slavery can be used to Christianity can be used to justify slavery, and Christianity can be used to abolish slavery, what does that mean for Christianity?
Okay. It doesn't mean anything, but the reason it doesn't is because I'll ask you the same question, except I'll use secularism. If secularism can lead to gulags, then how is secularism not going to lead to gulags?
Because there are going to be people that are going to be totally against gulags that are going to end the practice of gulags over
okay.
time.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, touche. Ditto.
But you're saying that your ideology is grounded in something that everybody else that isn't using the same ideology doesn't have access to.
No, I'm not. What are you talking about? Not
You're
have
saying
access
no
to?
grounding. You're saying no grounding for morals, no grounding.
Oh,
for
justification.
good or bad.
Yeah. They don't. Yeah, you can do the right thing without being justified in how it's the right thing or why it's the right thing. You can still do the right thing.
Right.
I never said that you have to be Christian to do the right thing.
But you're making a claim
to-
that there is something that facilitates Christians doing the right thing. And in many instances, they just don't. So what's the difference?
This is true of everybody, of all ideologies, of all religions. This isn't a critique of Christianity. It's a critique of
absolutely
humans.
is. Right.
No, it's a critique
And
of humans.
Christianity apparently doesn't fix it.
What are you talking about? Christianity led the abolition of slavery.
Not entirely, no.
No, entirely.
So you're saying
Entirely.
every single abolitionist was Christian, is what you're saying.
The top 100. That's as far as I got because I was pretty fucking impressed. I went 10. I was like, maybe we'll find a fucking atheist in there somewhere. I was like, let me get 10. Let me get 20, 40. Holy shit. It's 100. 100 top abolitionists, all of them professing Christians. Every
I believe
single
some
one
of them were Jewish.
No.
Yes, some of the abolitionists were Jewish.
Nope. 100% of them.
What?
Yep. I can pull the list for you and I can tell you the denomination they belong to. It's quite a long list, but we can do it.
So you
We do
got,
have 8.
oh wow, that's so wild. So you got Michael Halperin, Moses Elias Levy, August Bondi, Rabbi David Einhorn, all these
Step
people.
Speak easy. Just stop him when you recognize one of those names, please. Keep going.
I mean, it's not my fault you don't recognize them in the movement. They work for
No,
abolition.
that is the criteria. The top abolitionists, the most pronounced abolitionists, the ones that did the most of the writing, that people took the most of the content in, the most influential, were all Christian. And if secularism is this thing that is able to grant us all of these rights, then why wasn't a singular secularist there, a singular atheist there? Not one. In fact, the atheist enlightenment people, Voltaire, Diderot, these people justified slavery, saying that black people were inferior. They used reason to do it. So,
Yeah, I'm going to say most people can't name a single abolitionist because that's just not their interest. So to expect that people are going to know who all the abolitionists
bullshit.
are.
If you've got a 6th grade education, you went in American history and you learned of Frederick Douglass. Everybody knows Frederick Douglass. I mean, maybe not everybody, but anybody we're interested in talking to.
Frederick Douglass was a slave. So I would think
Yeah, Christian
him
that
being a
led the
slave
abolition.
would facilitate him wanting to be an abolitionist, not Christianity.
Well, no, you just
Same
said
goes for
that
Harriet
nobody would
Tubman.
be able to. Yeah, you said that nobody would be able to recognize.
I didn't say nobody. I said
an abolitionist.
most people can't name off abolitionists. If you talk to 15 people on the street, maybe one person will give you a couple names because that was something they were interested in. Most people can't name a large swath of abolitionists.
Well, I'm not saying that they have to name a large swath. Most people, I'm sure, can answer Frederick Douglass. I mean, he's such an important character in American history.
Yeah, I don't even think most people
I mean,
even consider him an abolitionist, just a black historical figure. They don't know that he was an abolitionist. But
well,
you're removing a lot of different people from the abolition movement because you just didn't see Christian names there. They were involved.
well, no. I'm not saying that every single person that was involved in the abolition movement was a Christian. I'm saying the people that popularized the idea of abolition were all Christian. Every single one of them. Every single one of them that was behind the popularization of the abolition movement, the thing that actually got the wheels turning, was Christians. It was Christians who developed the ideas of rights and human dignity and equality. Christians. Secularists and atheists didn't do that. They couldn't do it.
Yeah, I don't see
One of
that
those
being
guys
the
tried.
case.
That's okay. It is the case.
I'm saying if you use the Christian framework to endorse the slavery in the first place, the fact that a few Christians went against the teachings of the Bible.
A few. So it was just a few. The majority didn't support it. But they were able to get it passed. Even though the majority didn't support it, they were able to get it passed.
You're saying the majority of Christians were pro abolition?
I'm saying, well, the country at one point it tipped over from not being majority abolition to being majority abolition.
Yeah,
there was a point there where it flipped.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that was around the Civil War.
No. Some of these writings are pre unionization. So these writings go into the 1600s.
I mean, even Lincoln said if he didn't have to abolish slavery to not have a civil war, he would have done so.
So A man has fallen. Again, you're like, oh, this person did something bad. Yes, you brought up the damn the Christian thing again. That if Christianity was used to endorse slavery, how could it be used to abolish it? Well, again, this applies to secularists and eugenics just the same. It's the secularists that brought eugenics in. It was the scientists pushing for eugenics and
That was American Christians,
euthanasia, and
that was
still
passed
to this
on.
day.
That was American scientists using phrenology and other ideas, and that was passed on to the Germans. Most of the practices that the Germans were utilizing came from America, and American Christians at that.
Well, I'm speaking more broadly about like abortion specifically,
Abortion,
because it is
there's nothing against abortion in the Bible.
Man, you can't just say shit. You can't just say
I'm saying
shit.
I can't give you any biblical
you
verses
know that there's
outlawing
thou
abortion.
shall not murder. Very clear. I mean, there's no confusion
You
there.
understand by Judaic tradition, which is what the Bible comes from, they weren't considered a child to be murdered until they were born, correct? And there's verses in the Bible of how to induce a miscarriage in the case that your significant other was unfaithful.
Well, yeah, you're talking about some ancient Israel shit, dude.
The Bible is all ancient Israel shit. What are you talking about?
No, it's not. I mean, when I say ancient, but
it ain't modern.
Anyway, it's not how. It does not give you a way to show how to give an abortion. It doesn't justify giving abortions. And again, it is through the moral framework of Christianity, because there's so much. God is speaking to an ignorant people and trying to get them to understand something, and they don't understand it immediately. This unfolds over an incredible long period of time. So change takes time. It's culture being built under the Israelites, essentially a culture that's being
like
built
a really
to set them
God
apart.
that can tell you not to wear clothing of mixed fabrics or to cook a goat in its mother's milk and expect that they follow that, but can't say don't own slaves. How does that work?
What
God can make rules.
He can say don't own slaves.
He never did. I'm sure if the God is
that's
special
what
as
you're
say,
saying. You're saying that's what he should have done.
I don't know.
I
don't think God did anything, but it ain't in the book.
Well, no, obviously right now we're presupposing the Christian worldview and trying to internally critique it. So you're saying that God should have just commanded that there shouldn't be any slaves. If he should have just done that, and then
if God can say don't eat shellfish and say don't wear clothing of mixed fabric, and even go so far as to say don't cook a baby goat in its mother's milk, I'm pretty sure he's capable of saying don't own slaves if he exists.
Okay. So again, if you have two warring tribes going at each other, and one tribe's not going to stop until the other tribe is dead, and the one tribe moves in and claims victory over the other tribe by slaughtering all their military-aged men who can fight, what are you to do with everyone else? Are you to leave them there to starve and fend for this, all the women and children? You just leave them out there in the little patch of desert so they can just die, or should they be brought back and protected and eventually freed, as was the custom in ancient Israel? You understand that there's a law that says every 7 years you must release and free your slaves.
That's all.
Can you name another?
So there were two different rules. So I can run this down for you. There's one set of rules for Jewish slaves. That would be the one where they're set free, but there is a clause in there to trick that slave into being your slave for life. If you give them a wife and they say they want to stay with their wife or their kids, then you can bore that slave's ear with an awl and never release them. Same thing goes, that does not work for Gentile slaves. But all I'm saying is that God was able to order the entire slaughter.
Where does it say that? Where does it say that?
This is
that it's not. It doesn't. That it doesn't apply to the Gentiles.
Oh, there's two different sets of rules for slaves. This is in Leviticus and
Because you're also commanded to treat the sojourn as your own. But again, we're getting into the context of ancient Israel, where the realities of then are completely foreign to us today. So again, you can't just leave the women and children out in the desert to go fend for themselves.
God would just tell them God would just tell his people to kill all of them, like he did before. He said that with the Amalekites. He said it with the Canaanites. Like God will just order the slaughter of every man, woman, and child. Or in the instance that he's
you would have been
extra
happier.
Saucy, he would just say,
"Take the
children, the women."
If he would just slaughter them.
Oh, I don't think God is real, so I don't care what somebody says.
I understand that. I'm trying to lay out that you are trying to critique a system in which you do not understand.
No, I understand it perfectly.
Except you don't. And you've made that abundantly clear.
Well, you're saying that God is capable, but also at the same time incapable because men just don't understand things.
Did I
but
say
then
that?
He gets set up. Well, I mean, you're saying that people needed to have things revealed to them over time because they weren't prepared to understand these things. But then at the same time, like I said, he made rules against adultery, he made rules against all these things with the punishments outlined. So why couldn't God say, don't own slaves, not make rules to own slaves?
Okay. Again, in God's infinite wisdom, can you tell me, for instance, how many Amalekites were slaughtered?
All of them.
You can tell me that for certain.
That's what the book says. I don't think it actually happened.
Then how could they be referenced later in Scripture?
Because the book is a big book of claims. I don't think there was a global flood. I don't think there were slaves in Egypt. I don't think there was a slaughter of X people.
All right, you're on this internal critique where you're within the framework of the worldview and trying to find inconsistencies within it, and then you step out of it and say there's an inconsistency. Well, yeah, because you've stepped out of the system. Once you step out of the system, you're going to find all sorts of inconsistencies with your system. That's why they're not the same worldview. They're different worldviews because the precepts that you accept in each worldview basically give you the guardrails in which what is cohesive and coherent and what is not. As soon as you step outside of my system and try to critique it, your critique is worthless because your worldview is wrong, in my opinion. So to critique it from your worldview does nobody any good. You have to critique my worldview from my worldview.
I'm critiquing the commandments of God.
Mm-hmm.
So from your worldview, let's just say God had the capability to say, do not own slaves. Do you think that was within his ability? His or her, or sure. Whatever you want to call it.
He could have commanded it. Yes, there's nothing stopping him from commanding it.
Then why did it not happen?
Again, I need you to tell me how many Amalekites were slaughtered.
It doesn't state in the Bible how many Amalekites were slaughtered. It just said slaughter all of them.
Why were they slaughtered?
Because they were dicks to his chosen people at some point, and that was vengeance.
Okay, so all I'm pointing out here is we have absolutely no context for what's going on at the time. All right. So again, in order to continue down the path of the internal critique, I'm helping you to internally critique my position. I'm giving you the ammo the best I can. In order for you to actually critique the position, you must then accept that God has infinite wisdom, and there's particular reasons why he didn't do things. He had, in his infinite wisdom, he had his reasons for doing what he did. Now, who are we to question? We can't question. We don't have infinite knowledge to question, right? That is my position. Now, you're not finding incoherencies within that position. You're finding an incoherency with your position and my position, which they're two different worldviews. They're obviously not going to coincide.
So in God's infinite wisdom, we should have slaves.
What?
I'm trying to understand if it wasn't in God's infinite wisdom for slaves, why would he mandate rules on how to treat slaves, when to release them, how to keep them?
What did those rules culminate in ultimately? What did those rules that he established culminate? In his infinite wisdom, what have we gotten today that wouldn't have been possible without his commandments? Go on, I'll wait.
I can't think of anything.
The abolition of slavery. the abolition of slavery. It is through the soil that God created, the culture, the rules, the regulations that he placed down. It is from that soil from which all of the Enlightenment ideas were founded and justified, that the American Enlightenment came in and built upon, which ultimately resulted in the abolition of slavery. So yes, I think God knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you understand that the abolition of slavery wasn't purely just based on what Christians thought was good or bad. It was an economic reason as to why slavery was untenable in the Americas, correct?
You're saying that it was economic reasons why we should abolish slavery. I actually have a quote for that, because one of those abolitionists specifically talked about how it is not, and you know, if you go through all the abolitionists, the top 100 or top 10 or whatever you want to choose, they're not arguing economics. They're arguing the moral evil of the institution, explicitly saying that we are denigrating human beings, that we have removed their human dignity, and that it is a sin and it is a stain and it is an evil. And this was beat into the heads of people until they understood. And then we abolished that shit.
Not purely because of Christians. So you
Who
have,
else?
so you have slave
If
uprisings.
the nation was majority Christian, then it requires the majority to enact any law. And when I say majority, this vast majority was Christian. Yes, it was a Christian
have
movement.
every
definition.
abolitionist under the sun trying, they can all be Christian, trying to end slavery. If the federal government doesn't do anything to end the slavery, it ain't gonna end. I'm sorry. There were reasons why the government got online.
How does the federal government? How does the government make any change? How does the federal government make any change whatsoever?
They make laws and enforce them.
And if those laws and enforcement mechanisms are enforced by Christian moral ethics from the people at the bottom who get voted up, who've had this beat into their head, that it is a moral stain on our. That was the argument given. It was not economics. The argument was not economics. Now that you may find people who use like a sub argument that that's not the main driving force that led to the abolition of slavery. You can go read all of the top arguments. You're not going to find the economics was anywhere near the top. It was the moral conviction of Christians.
I would say the moral conviction of human beings, because those same Christians were perfectly fine with slavery all the way up until their morals were attacked.
All right, where's the secular abolition? Where's the Muslim abolition?
There were secular abolitionists. There are also Muslims that are anti-slavery.
No, abolition, not just abolitionists. Abolition.
I'm saying all of the Christians weren't doing anything actively. They could have been writing or whatever, but the people that are actually trying to voting wasn't a part of it.
Writing and voting. Writing is super important. That's how everybody got information, was writing. You read everything. That's the only way you got information.
Civil war. You never would have had to end of slavery without a civil war. So it went beyond voting.
Well, that's a claim you couldn't possibly demonstrate.
All right. So that will wrap up the open floor there. Excellent exchange from both sides tonight.
I'm glad we did the 30 minutes.
Yeah, see, you guys, it had more iron there left to sharpen, you know? But we're going to enter the final phase here of the debate, closing statements. Quick reminder for the live chat, the Q&A is there. So if you got questions for either debater, make sure you drop them in right now. And remember, the Super Chats, PayPal, Cash App questions, they obviously take priority. So if they take the full 30 minutes, we won't get to all the other questions. But I don't see too many there, so we should be able to get to those other questions as well. With that said, we're going to move into closings. We're going to start with you, Stepfire. So whenever you're ready, let me restart that for you. Whenever you're ready, I will start the timer up with your voice.
So this was a fun debate. Appreciate it. You coming out last minute, man, and sticking it out through the whole debate, dude. Respect. Appreciate the hell out of you, man. But the prompt tonight, Christian nationalism is beneficial for society. The entire objective of Christian nationalism is to re-centralize the Christian ethic within our public life. And in doing so, we will see the benefit of all of its people, because the secularists, the atheists, the Hindu, they still prosper under Christian systems. They are still protected and still have the basic rights that all human beings have. Uh, there will be there are subtleties that, it's going to be. I'm not as educated as the founders, and I can't iron out exactly how the entire structure of the government is going to be played. These are guys who are incredibly educated, and you know, again, that speaks to the Christian ethos. The universities being spawned from um, cathedrals and hospitals and all of these things that developed through the Christian ethos. And as long as we can hold that Christian ethos, we can continue developing improvements into the future. We have a proven track record of moral progression. There, you don't see moral regression not until you start disassociating the person from their religiosity, from their Christianity, their Christian roots. It is upon Christianity and its worldview that you can ground the concept of equality to begin with. Without it, you have no justification. It's survival of the fittest. It's back to Darwin. That is what it is. And if we want to get rid of all of the infirm and unproductive, then there's not a grounded argument that could be made from the atheist position as to why we should not do that. It's the only thing that they can say is, well, I don't want it done to me, so let's not do that. Well, that's not how we operate society. So I walk through fertility rates. You really need to look into that, man, because it is super important to understand that we are dying as a society. Not Christians themselves, but Western society. And if you want to preserve Western society, the thing in the world that grants rights to human beings, that gives human dignity to human beings, or acknowledges the dignity within human beings, then you must want to protect the system that created and preserves those very things. You cannot get rid of that system and then expect to continue with your freedoms. The founders understood this, and they wrote about it explicitly. So would it be beneficial for society? I think it's an obvious yes. So with that, man, again, thank you for coming out, and Speak Easy for hosting.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. With that, we're going to hand the mic over to Lethe. Lethe, whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I will start the timer up with your voice.
All right. So, as the ghost of Jerry Falwell did not seem to have my interlocutors back in this case, because there was no clear mechanism for Christian nationalism beyond, well, I want states to have people in the highest office being Christians, and then more people will be Christians, and it'll all be good. I don't see how that works. The idea that Christianity is the reason why people would have more kids, when I would say from any metric that you look at, people are going to say that the reason why people are not having children is primarily due to a high cost of living, expensive housing, prioritizing their careers. There are multiple reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. You can still be Christian and can't afford to have kids. I don't see a bunch of homeless people out there having kids. And if they do, they become wards of the state, and then maybe the Christians will do something for them. But until then, I'm going to leave that alone. The definition of Christian nationalism, as you were putting it, just seems to come down to states. It wouldn't be a federal thing. With that being the case, there's no mechanism by which those particular states aren't going to disenfranchise other states. And I don't want Christians to be discriminated against by other Christians depending on what state they happen to move to, because I think there should be affordability of opportunity between all of the states, and you shouldn't have to subscribe to any particular brand of Christianity in order to prosper and flourish in another state. Then we look at the idea that there are certain sects of Christianity that you don't even consider Christian, like the Mormons, who seem to be a powerhouse when it comes down to having children and having money. I would think if Christians were going to do the right thing, you wouldn't be seeing all these Christians with mega jets and mega churches not willing to let them in the case of an emergency, like with Joel Osteen, where there was a flood going on and they weren't willing to let them into the ground. I would think if Christians were trying to spread Christianity in that way, they would be taking that money to make sure that these people can have kids, providing free childcare, doing things to shore up the issues of not being able to have children. All these things I think would be a far better showing for Christianity. But all I see is it's causing division amongst people. It's creating laws that disenfranchise free speech. I see them basically breaking down the moral framework of how America works. So, to the core internal contradiction that a Christian nationalist state must pick a theological winner and politicize their Christian identity and incentivize outward conformity, I don't see how that works in what was outlined. So, as much as I enjoyed having the conversation, I kind of figured it was going to get down to theology. And for the most part, he still couldn't explain why God didn't say, don't have slaves. And I will end at that.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And that concludes the closing statements. Great work from both debaters tonight. If you are enjoying what you are seeing, make sure you like the stream, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the debates we host here on Sort of Reasons. Like I said, we run all kinds of matchups, political debates, cultural, religion, social issues, philosophy, internet beefs. Okay, anything there's a conversation worth clashing over, we bring it into the arena. And don't forget to subscribe also to tonight's debaters as well. Their links are in the description. Make sure you show them support for stepping into the arena and sharpening their arguments tonight live for you all. And before I start the timer for the chat Q&A, I usually like to ask a question or two for each side. Usually it'll be based off either arguments I heard, something I think deserved another pass, points I think missed, things like this. And then after those questions I answer, we'll get to the official 30-minute Q&A. So for the first ones here, I'll start with the affirmative tonight. So my first question for you, Stepfire, is what would Christian nationalism practically look like in a modern society without violating any like religious freedoms or like creating the second class citizens for non-Christians like Lethe was highlighting, like policy and structure wise?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I never got around to the my answer on that question that you had asked earlier. How would it look like in public life? Well, we talked about marriages and how it would affect those. It would affect education, where children aren't going to be taught, relativism, where truth is subjective, stuff like this. The great thing about the nation that we have right now is that it is still primed. It still has that Christian culture undergirding. So there's not a lot that has to change on the surface of things. It would be more so of backing the federal government's power up to allow the states more room to operate as they see fit, while the federal government is protecting the rights, like the life, liberty, and property of all civilians in America.
All right, and do you have anything for that, Lethe? Look, you had something to say.
I mean, it's already clear that he'd be curtailing people's rights based on the religion while not allowing, like J.D. Vance to get married to his wife in the way that he did. They could have a civil union, but they couldn't be married. Like, all of this is disenfranchising the First Amendment of freedom of
How is it disenfranchising?
You just said if you're getting married under a different religion, their marriage would not be recognized. That's a disenfranchisement. Or do you think that's equality?
Yeah. The church is not going to recognize a marriage outside of the church. It's not the state. It's not me saying
the church doesn't need to. The state would. The state would recognize your marriage license.
Well, yes. And you would be married. You would be married in the eyes of the church, and you would have the civil union under the federal government or under the state government. or however they work it out. So the marriage part of it comes with extra responsibilities, extra duties. No fault divorce is gotten rid of. All of this stuff is that whole system has changed. Where a civil union, it don't mean shit anyway. If you want to go break it up, go break it up. But a marriage means something. So you can't just go break it up because you're having a bad day or a bad week and you've hit a bump in the road and you just want to fucking blow your life up and destroy the home of your children. And yeah, we're going to have mechanisms. It's going to be mostly societal pressures that push back on the idea that it's okay to just leave your wife or leave your husband and explode the world that you've built for your kids. Yeah, there's going to be, I'm not saying they're not being treated any differently, except with the marriage under the Christian church, there will be extra penalties, extra hurdles to cross in order to break that union. So if you want to say there's disenfranchisement, you can almost say that it's towards the Christians themselves, but it's something they agree to. So it's not even disenfranchisement because you don't have to get married.
So under what you're saying, fewer people would get married because there would be way too many penalties if something happens with that marriage.
Marriage would be taken much more serious. Yeah, less people would get married and way less people would get divorced.
So that means fewer people would be
so we're not
having kids.
So we won't
that metric. So you don't get what you want.
No, the Christians are fine. The Christian marriage rates they're not amazing, but they're still way above atheist and non-traditional marriages. Way above. I'm talking about 70% higher rates of staying together with a Christian couple versus not.
I mean, all right. You can't get divorced, absolutely.
All right. So my next question for you, Stepfire, is critics like Leafy has done tonight actually will point to things like the Salem witch trials and religious persecutions and stuff like that. So what safeguards would exist in a Christian nationalist system to prevent those kinds of outcomes?
Well, the federal government would still have the power in order to protect the life, liberty, and property of other people. So just because you're a Catholic in a Presbyterian state doesn't mean you can be executed by the state. That's not how that would play out. You're right. Your basic rights are still protected. Now, when you enter other states, those states themselves grant you rights themselves. So, again, that would be just getting into the state level of things. But yeah, the federal government is still on a leash, and still holds a leash.
Did you have anything for that, Lethy?
No, not really. I mean, you could clearly see the punishments and persecutions of different churches throughout the early Americans, and we've fought entire wars over this in Great Britain and everything else. It's the whole reason why we had to have America in the first place, but cool.
All right. So then my question for you, Leafy, my first one would be so if Christian nationalism is harmful, what moral framework should guide a nation instead, that would produce better social or societal outcomes? Sorry.
Great question.
So the moral framework would be essentially what we already have. You can take ideas from different schools of thought. You can take some from Christianity, some from Buddhism, some from Islam, however you want to do it, to establish the laws that you want to establish, with the idea that you're not using spiritual or spectral ideas in enforcement. So you can't, kill people because you think they're a witch, or, say you can't suffer a woman to speak and so you stone her, or whatever the case may be. These are things that shouldn't be there. But the laws that we have in place seem to work pretty well without needing to get into religion in any way, shape, or form. We have laws against killing people. We have first, second, third degree murder. We have laws against child abuse. We have organizations set up, or infrastructure set up for child protective services, elder abuse, hospitals, medicine. Like we have all these things already set up without the need to go beyond secular means for it because we don't want to disenfranchise other people.
All right.
Yeah,
Did you have
I
anything to that?
actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I actually didn't disagree with what he said there in the beginning. That the moral framework that we should be using is the one that we currently have, which is the Christian moral framework. So I agree.
All right. All right. And then for my second question for you, Lethe, is like, as mentioned by Stepfire, like historically, Western society has been influenced by Christianity. You know, it produced many that of like the institutions we have today and whatnot. So, like, how do we distinguish between like beneficial Christian influences and the harmful religious nationalism?
Well, that's why the Catholic Church established secularism because they didn't want to have religious views governing in the way that it was. And a lot of the ideas that came from the early Americans came a lot from Rome and Greece. So the ideas of the Stoic thinkers have been like a pretty strong framework to see which things are harmful and which things are not. So I want to say every time you get into an extremist Christian or any religious framework, you're going to see some abuses and persecution happening. It's the dogma that creates the problem, not the religion itself.
All right. Did you have anything for that, Stepfire?
I mean, yeah, every worldview has its dogma. So again, that whole answer wasn't really a critique.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't
Okay.
need to be a
And
huge critique because you can look at Islamic countries when it wasn't a religious extremist country. Women had rights; things were perfectly fine out there. People were going to school. People were living good lives until all of a sudden the religious extremists get involved and bad news happens.
That's because those religious extremists were put on a leash of the Christian America. Yeah, as soon as we pulled out, what happened?
No, this
All of
was
that went
back
to
in
fucking
the.
shit.
I want to say this was back in the '60s, so America wasn't
Oh,
there at the
I
time.
couldn't speak. Yeah, I couldn't speak to that. There were some Soviets there, probably.
That came a bit later, but yeah.
all right. All right. And then I want to ask kind of just like a question for both of you. This is just it's like kind of like a bonus question, we'll call it. Because I've heard this debate so many times. I've gone to study them myself. I've had them against myself because everyone knows I love debating myself to get to my answers. So when we have this debate here, if you guys were to look back at this debate of both of your sides, is the real debate about Christianity itself, or whether any moral or religious worldview should influence the government?
Well, I don't believe the conversation is about Christianity because I don't believe Christian nationalism is about Christianity. I believe it's about using an ideology as a weapon to institute power and control within the government.
What do you think, Steph?
I need you to ask that question again.
Yeah, so like when it comes down to it, like even just looking back at tonight of how the arguments have went, do you think the real debate is about Christianity
Oh yeah,
itself, or whether any
yeah. I
moral
think
religious worldview should influence the government?
yeah, I think the attack is purely against Christianity itself, because I brought up, society is going to die. He disagrees. The numbers disagree with him. Um, I mentioned it in my opening statement. The only way to make up for that is mass immigration, and with mass immigration, you're going to be importing different cultures who believe different things, and that's going to shape the foundation of the country. And you're not going to have the rights and the freedoms that you advocate for now. Um, it it is, and it is kind of basically about Christianity from my perspective as well, because it is the Christian moral framework that has built the greatest nation. And if we want to continue being the greatest nation, we can't chop off its legs and hope to continue to walk.
All right. All right, so that we'll get into the official Q&A here. Like I said, chat, we'll do the super chats off and whatnot first, and we'll get to the Q&A in the chat there. So if you want to bump yourself up, you got to send it in through super chat. So first off, we got two new members, Two Wills and Tranquility Plus. Shout out to you both. Thank you for becoming a member. I appreciate that big time. Sempiternal Chaos coming in with $2 just to show some support. Thank you very much. What a tongue twisted myself there. $10 comes from Birds Aren't Even Real. What about the random people that created the country? They weren't deists. Could we say we were led astray by elites, just like the Catholic Church did by allowing secularism to take root?
Well, that's a good. That was
That
good.
was great.
That was a question for you.
I just needed a little sip of water.
No, you're good.
You could say we were led astray, but I don't think we were led astray. I think Christians are doing perfectly fine in this country. There's no assault against Christianity. It's just not allowing Christians to impose their thought process on everybody else. It's fine that you're indoctrinated with an idea or even subscribe to an idea, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be pushed on other people. There's no reason to have the 10 Commandments in classrooms. There's no reason to have Bibles in classrooms. There's no reason for any of that. We have libraries for a reason. If you want to find these things, you can do it. So I think allowing for secularism is probably the best answer in creating a more cohesive country that's made of multiple ideas.
Yeah, you said this earlier, and I wanted to pick on you so bad because you said it, and you said, "Why would we put the 10 Commandments in front of kids? They can't even read." And the answer is because we want them to read, so you have to put words in front of them so they can learn to read. But it goes beyond that because we don't want them to just read the words. We want them to understand those words. What do these words actually mean, and why are these things? Why are these rules established such? And once you start getting into that, you understand where your rights come from. You understand where human dignity comes from. Well, if you throw all those things out, you can pretend that you understand where they come from, but you can't justify any of it. Your worldview doesn't allow for the justification.
What's the first commandment, my G?
Love thy God.
No. Try
Yeah, it
again.
is.
Try again.
You shall love your God. Or there, maybe it's thou shalt be no other gods before me. But
There you go.
oh well, my bad. What about it?
How is that useful?
Why is it useful to love the Lord thy God?
To say, I am the Lord thy God, you shall have no other gods before me.
Yeah. Why?
How is that useful to children?
How is it? Again, it's a whole lot deeper than how is it useful for children. It's that idea being developed over time that's useful for children. Understanding that principle is useful for children because if you're not worshiping God, you're worshiping something else, and whatever that thing is that you're worshiping is the wrong thing to worship.
Maybe
That's
just
how it can
don't
help
worship
kids.
anything and be rational.
No,
So what's the
you
second?
will worship
what's the
something.
second? What's the
You're-
second commandment? This is fun because the first four are kind of useless.
the graven images.
Ooh, very good. So, are children out there making graven images and worshiping them? Anything on that order?
Okay, let's just skip ahead a little bit here. Why should we put the "thou shalt not murder" in front of them? Are they out here murdering people? Again, what are you talking about?
I'm saying you don't need to teach children about that. Exactly.
You don't need to
tell
teach children not to
not to
murder.
hit each other. We tell them not to push each other, bite each other. We don't tell kids in school, hey, don't murder your classmate.
Why shouldn't you hit, and why shouldn't you bite, and why shouldn't you subjugate? Why shouldn't you kill? Why should you do all of these things?
Because as part of the social contract, you don't want that happening to you. And it's not beneficial.
So
To
it's good to
society.
teach the 10 Commandments. If you hold to the 10 Commandments, you will respect your neighbor. You will love thy neighbor. You will have a better society if you respect the 10 Commandments.
But then we end up back in the same spot where all the slaves that were brought here, not thy neighbor.
What?
Were all the slaves that were brought here, not thy neighbor.
No, again, we did go through this. We're talking about the mixing of cultures or the blending of cultures. Our culture, wasn't just Christianity over here, and now we got slavery because we got Christianity. No, we were the British Empire, which had slavery, and it is through the Christian moral worldview that abolished that slavery. We went over all of this.
So British Christians versus American Christians. Gotcha. Similar outcome.
What? Yeah, the abolition of slavery. Yes, I have the same outcome.
One later than the other, but I feel you on that.
All right. Next one comes in from a Testicle Johnson. Says America is a Muslim country built by Muslims for Muslims.
Inshallah.
America is a secularist country built by secularists for secularists.
And secularists can be
It's
Christians.
just absurd. It's
and
just
Christians
absurd.
can be secularists, right?
Well, no. To be secularist, you must remove God. You can't be Christian and remove God.
You can't have secular Christians.
I mean, you can call yourself secular. You can act as if your moral framework is not coming from the Christian worldview, but it is. How you determine good and bad, how you are making your decisions as a secularist is informed by your morality, which in our case is Christianity. Secularism isn't a moral arbiter. It's not neutral. It still imposes its own views.
That's
like
wild
you can't
to
have
me
the 10
to hear
like you
the
can't have the
words.
10 commandments in school.
So what you're saying is you can't believe in a God and be secular.
You can claim to be, but to be truly secular is to remove the influence of Christianity and religion out of the decision-making process. Once you get into what is good and bad, whether you ought or ought not do something, you are appealing to morality at that point. You cannot appeal to morality secularly. There's no such thing.
All right. Next one comes in from Rowdy Gowdy, member for 2 months. Shout out to you, Rowdy Gowdy. For both, would you approve of mandatory Neuralink at birth with no side effects to upload your worldview? If not, you would be okay with allowing bad stuff?
Yeah, I would not mandate Neuralink.
No, that seems really odd. Why would you need to
But why not?
have
Why wouldn't you want to
Neuralink?
in order to calm the population, to kill all of crime? There will be no more crime, no more murder. What is your objection to that?
There's no guarantee of that.
Well, no, in the hypothetical, that's what the guarantee is, that there would be no side effects and it completely adheres to your worldview, creating your utopia.
Well, that's assuming that a person with a Christian worldview cannot kill someone or commit a crime. So no matter what ideology you implant
What?
people with, there's still a capability or a capacity to commit harm.
Yeah, but I'm talking about within the hypothetical of the question.
Yes.
You're in this hypothetical, everything goes perfectly good, and everybody becomes just like you. They believe like you. Everything's peace and harmony. Society is perfectly fixed. Why wouldn't you do that?
That's assuming that there is a perfect worldview that completely negates all negativity. That worldview does not exist. There is no worldview you could upload via Neuralink that would accomplish that goal.
Even though, well, then it doesn't make it perfect, but it makes it almost perfect. As perfect as man could get it.
I mean, I guess you could
strip the autonomy from every human being in order to achieve
go
your
through like
end goals.
What's that thing? What was that movie with Christian Bale? Like remove all emotions from people and then like have thought monitors.
I know there was the Minority Report, but he had another one that was, I can't remember what it was called. But it was one of his early movies. He was young when he did it.
Equilibrium. That's what it was. Equilibrium.
That's what it is. Yep,
so you have to have like an equilibrium kind of situation where just people are dead inside. Like, no. There's no like
But
ideology there.
in order to fix all crime, so nobody dies anymore from, you know, human beings intentionally killing them.
I mean, we could literally just kill people unintentionally. We've done it constantly, like with missionary work. I still feel bad for that one dude that went to the Sentinelese Islands and got yeeted from his boat. That was brutal.
Yeah, they're out there doing the Lord's work, trying to fix these heathens. You know. See, a Christian wouldn't dump your body in the river like that. You're not coming to America and then you know, as soon as you show up here, we're going to throw a bunch of arrows in your chest and then throw you in the river.
I mean, he was breaking a law, and his Christian worldview told him he needed to break that law. So
Even if you broke the law, we wouldn't do that to you.
All right. Next one comes in from How Long Nate for $5. Says, as an atheist, what would be your best recommendation for a moral, non-violent, and caring society?
follow the laws. Try to do as little harm as possible. Not too difficult. Don't be a dick is a pretty good framework to go by.
Okay. That sounds like a good old Christian.
I don't know. There's a lot
Don't
of
harm
Christian
people.
dicks out there. Jerry Falwell, like I was just talking about Jerry Falwell. He was a huge dick.
Yeah, I mean, dicks come in all ideologies. So.
Very true.
Stalin was a pretty big dick, I think.
Mao was a pretty big dick.
Pol Pot.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Lots of dicks. Those
Yeah.
dicks. Vigilante comes in for $2. Says, Stepfire, what flavor of mental deficit do you have?
I don't
Shots
know. I just take the things in the bottle. I don't know what they do or why I need them, but they make the voices go away.
That's fair.
And now he no longer hears God's voice, and it's terrible.
Testicle Johnson comes in again for another $5. Thank you very much. Says, it's a bad thing that happened, ergo, who are we to question the mind or will of God?
Yeah, I don't know what the first part is referring to, but I do remember asking the question.
I think it was about the Amalekites.
It's a bad thing that happened, ergo, who are we to question? It's a bad thing that happened.
Yeah, like he's.
Ergo, who are we?
I think he was. I think that came in when you guys were talking about the slaughtering of the Amalekites.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't the reason I used it all. I explicitly asked for context surrounding the slaughter of the Amalekites, in which nobody can give you the context because there is no context outside of the very little writing of it that we have. So without that context, you have to bake in a lot of assumptions that you have no justification for baking in. So with the all-knowing God, he understands all of the complexities, and therefore he can act, and that's why he's a perfect actor, essentially.
You got two.
Oh, okay.
things.
So I'm getting clarification. Sorry to
slavery,
interrupt.
but-
Yeah, that's right. It was about the slavery thing. Getting clarification in the chat here that it was about why didn't God?
But I could very easily ask you, like, what's a justified reason to genocide a people? I don't think there's a good reason to ever genocide an entire people.
Well, I mean, it depends on the context and what was happening. Some of these tribes that were around ancient Israelites were, putting babies in the burning hands of pagan gods and such, and burning them alive, and throwing women and children into fires and poking them with sticks to make sure that they don't come out of the fire and that they burn a lot. They were doing horrific shit. They were going around raping and pillaging other civilizations.
You kill the babies when that happens, or do you just take the babies and raise them in the right tradition at that point?
I mean, I don't know exactly. Again, this was the question I asked: how, if the Amalekites were annihilated, then how could they be referenced later as a living people, chronologically in Scripture? It's because they weren't annihilated.
Well, because chronologically, the Bible is inconsistent, but I don't want to get into that right now.
Well, these people, the Amalekites as a people, were annihilated. That's what happened. Every man, woman, and child annihilated. There was no more Amalekite people. Now their descendants still went on. Well, how could their descendants still go on if they literally went in and killed every man, woman, and child? So again, people are given commandments by God, and then they write these commandments down in their writings. So again, there's just so much context to each of these things that in order to sling a moral arrow, it takes a lot of hubris. You have to assume that you know and understand a lot of shit that you don't know and understand. And I don't pretend to know and understand those things. So again, within the Christian worldview, we do trust God because he is the perfect actor. So if he done something, he had good reason for doing it, and he's completely justified in doing it. It is his creation, whatever that may be. He's bringing around his will. It's his to do with what he wills. So it's not, we do trust that, God is out there doing good, because definitionally that's all he can do.
So let's say a pregnant woman made an enemy of God, and you were told to yeetus deletus said woman. Is that good?
So when I'm taking on this hypothetical, I'm just going to accept that this is the legitimate voice of God telling me that I must do this. Then yes, but I don't believe that God would tell me to do that. So it's incongruent with, outside of the hypothetical, it's incongruent with my worldview, but because it's against the nature of God. So
doesn't seem like it. The Bible said it was within his nature. So I'm just going by biblically, based on the claims and the lore of the Bible itself. This was something God was down with.
Okay, how many Amalekites was killed? How many baby Amalekites were killed?
He said all of them, and apparently he was wrong.
And he said all of them, except it wasn't all of them. All right, so when you're writing to a people, you can Trump is famous for this. Exaggerate. All of them say, we're going to annihilate all of them. Okay, this is verbiage that people have used throughout time when talking to people. So they did go and annihilate the Amalekites. They were, as a people, annihilated. They were no longer going around raping and pillaging other civilizations around them. They were no longer burning babies at the stake.
All right. And last super chat here is from Sempiternal Chaos, another $2 just to show some support. Thank you very much. Let me go to the questions here. Oh, we got a bunch of them. Okay. Let me see here. So the first one I see here. Oh, shit. What did I just do? First one I see here comes in from Mrs. Foxworth. Says, here, I'll actually paste it into a banner here so you guys can read it as well. We got to take some banners out because the other night on VK we went through 100, I think.
Is he?
If we remove the moral framework Christianity provided to early American law, what objective foundation replaces it?
So I believe a lot of the founding fathers were taking information from other societies, Roman society, Greek society, and utilizing a lot of those ideas in the American framework. So even without the Christian framework, but that Christian framework is something that most people were familiar with, you could still get a very similar outcome because the governance is what mattered most, not necessarily the ideology behind it.
All right. Next one comes in also from Mrs. Foxworth. Says, if removing shared religious values reduces division, why is modern society often more polarized as secularism increases?
Yeah, he actually disputed that, saying that we're less tribal now, even though that, political tensions are getting high, political assassinations and the such. Assassination attempts on public figures is increasing. As we secularize, we are destabilizing, and it takes a while after you chop a tree down for the root to rot. It takes a while. It takes a long time. But luckily, we're going in and drilling holes into those stumps and pouring motor oil into them to expedite that process with a little more secularism.
So when we're looking at the reason we have division now in society, and there are Christians that don't agree with each other primarily because of politics, I'm going to say the media landscape and the divisive nature of the politics we have now, as well as other differing ideas in society, we have these problems. And it's not having a shared Christian belief worldview that's going to fix that. Because if Christians are tribalized in this particular landscape, then apparently Christianity isn't going to fix it.
Got him. Got him.
Muted, right? Yeah. Always got to do it once. It wouldn't be a speakeasy stream if I didn't talk on mute at least once. If the founders intended a purely deist framework, why were Christian ideas and biblical references so common in founding era political writings?
Yeah, I think I covered this earlier. So, for the same reason that we were brought up in a Christian society, if you were brought up in a Muslim society, if you were brought up in a Buddhist society, whatever the case may be, that would be the iconography, the visualization, the metaphors that are used in your writings, in your ideas, in whatever you're doing. So, for the same reason, in different cultures, you have different ways of writing. Is what we had here in America as people that were brought up under mostly a Christian framework.
All right. All right. Next question.
Yeah.
Also, did
It's
you have
like for the
something?
same reason, like if you die, if a Christian
It
dies,
was
they
a
don't
lot.
see Vishnu, they don't see Allah, they see Jesus, they see, God in pearly gates.
It's a little weaselly because the Christian ideas that we're talking about, they're referencing scripture directly. They're not talking about generic gods. They're not talking about just any man's God. They're talking about very particular God, the creator of the universe, the one, the Alpha and the Omega. So the reason that they used those, they didn't just use like the ideology of these particular systems, because I understand what you're talking about. They looked at other systems to see what worked and what didn't work, and they tried to meld all this shit together. And they write about this extensively. But to say that, they're just using Christian language, they're not just saying, well, this is good and this is bad. They're saying Jesus Christ, our holy savior. These are not any way comparable. The founding documents, again, like I said earlier, I think it's over 30%, 32, 34% or something like that of the citations are from scripture, more than any other source. That includes Enlightenment figures and all of these other ancient republics that was taught. More than all of those, scripture was cited. And that was because this was a Christian nation founded on Christian ideas for Christians.
Yeah, secularism isn't exclusive from religion. Like, you can have some people with Christian
You
ideas,
can say that.
but at the end of the day, if they chose not to put it in, which is why in the Constitution and in most documents, you don't see the name Jesus anywhere. You don't see a God outline. They didn't say which specific God. They didn't say Judeo-Christian God. They didn't say, Yahweh. They didn't say any of these things. They just put out the idea of creator, God, done. Deists can have that idea.
Yeah. It's pretty explicit. They, again, the drafters of the Constitution, of state Constitution, all this explicitly do use the name of Christ. In their public writings, they talk about Christ often. A lot of these men were incredibly devout Christians. So Christ was a central part in their lives. To say that they didn't reference these things is ridiculous. They absolutely did.
I didn't say they didn't reference it. I'm saying it didn't make it into the framework. For some states, it may have.
It is the framework.
I'm saying in some states, but not the Constitution.
Deuteronomy and how judges are to be appointed over. They write about this as well as they pulled when they went through what worked in ancient societies and what didn't. That was one of the things they pulled from. It was like, well, we're going to try to do this. That's where the separations of powers came from. A Christian idea.
All right. Next one also comes in from Mrs. Foxworth. Mrs. Foxworth just made sure she got all the questions in at the start. I love it. Mrs. Foxworth says, were the founders rejecting Christianity or just rejecting a government mandated church?
I would say they were rejecting a government mandated church. It wasn't about Christianity in itself. They just knew that it was going to be more cohesion in the country and less chances for the church to take root in the government itself, causing what they left.
Yeah, I more so agree with that.
All right. Next one, also from Mrs. Foxworth. If a small local abuse like Salem discredits Christian influence, should we also discard secular moral frameworks because of Stalin, Mao, and other historical atrocities?
I'm going to
I
say,
think I actually
course
asked
not.
you something like this in our
I'm going to say
exchange.
fairly easily that the frameworks of Stalin, Mao, and other people who committed historical atrocities saw a vast shift from what they were doing at the time in which horrible things happened, which changed their moral framework so that that thing wouldn't happen again. For the same reason you have laws in in Europe that are anti, mustache man, and you can't fly his flag or have his iconography. We don't want these atrocities happening again. So we learn the lesson and we move forward.
All right. So then my next question here comes in from Mrs. Foxworth as well. Says, do you believe secular ideologies are immune from persecuting non-believers?
No,
Man, she's on fire.
they absolutely aren't immune, but the way we have our secular framework set up, it is to protect non-believers and believers all the same.
All right. All right. Next one comes in from Kyle Ran a Mile. What part of religious metaphysics worries Leafy? Or rather, why is he opposed to any religious metaphysics?
Why am I opposed to religious metaphysics? Because they don't exist. They don't worry me. You shouldn't be governing based on whether you think someone's a witch.
Unless they're actually a witch.
Well, when we find a witch, we can deal with that. We can cross that bridge when we get there.
All right, what if we switch it up? What if it was, instead of the Salem witch trials, it was the Salem vampire trials?
Oh,
If we found a vampire,
That's a funny one. So, here in California, in a city right next to where I used to live, the city council or the city planners planted garlic in all of the flower beds and everything throughout the city. And the reason why was to make sure there were no vampires in the city. And when he was confronted about it, he said, well, we don't have any vampires, do we?
That's great.
we don't have no witches, do we? Oh,
That's great.
It's freaking hilarious.
That's a good one.
It's actually happened. It was Lawndale, California. You can look it up. They planted garlic. It was crazy.
That is funny. I kind of want to look into it now. It's funny. Next one comes in from the Vigilante TV. Says, Stepfire, what's your opinion on Great Replacement Theory?
is that the one where there's an intentional effort to push out white evangelicals and replace them with foreigners, essentially? I don't know.
Something along that order, that there's a group of people that have intentionally made sure that there are minorities replacing white people in society.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big guy in conspiracy theories. I think that almost all of them are bunk. So, I'm a pretty big skeptic when it comes to these grand conspiracy theories. But I do know that there are people in positions of power who have explicitly stated that this is their goal. So, that's my opinion.
The replacement theory, so we're clear, is usually, from what I've heard, is like there's some Western elites and the the Jays are conspiring to
Well, I believe it now. I believe
replace
it now.
white Americans with Asians or Africans. That is literally like the gist of it. Yeah.
I'm sold. I'm sold.
Ah, shit. All right. And so here, we got one more question here. We'll let this one come in. From Rowdy Gowdy says, are all the things that are beneficial to society good? It's a good question.
If it is beneficial to society, it is good. Otherwise, it would be a detriment to society, definitionally.
I mean, it depends on the framework you're using to determine what good and what beneficial is.
Well, it's stating that it is beneficial, so are all things that are beneficial, not could be beneficial, but are beneficial. So I would say, by definition, if they're beneficial, they are good.
Yeah, but I mean that's on the whole. Because if I was to, for example, if I was to say that a lot less people would die in traffic accidents if we just got rid of traffic. You can't just drive anymore. Well, it's a good thing that less people are dying, but it's not good for society. It's not beneficial for society that less people are dying in traffic accidents through that particular mechanism of making it. So, I'm just going to stick with the fucking beneficial good, same thing. So, yeah, I'm going to just go with yeah for the simplicity's sake.
Makes sense. All right. All right. So, excuse me. All that right there is going to wrap up our Q&A for tonight. First off, thank you to everyone in the live chat for all the questions, the engagement, the support. Seriously, it is what allows me to keep bringing you these debates, the entire Swords of Reason experience week after week. I appreciate every single one of you. And of course, huge thank you to our debaters as well for stepping into the arena tonight, sharpening their ideas in front of all of us. Let me check real quick before we move on. I know you said you might have to go. So, Lee, are you guys sticking around for the open panel or?
I am an
I'll hang out for a
hour
little bit.
past my bedtime. I got to get up at 4 a.m. So
Yeah, I
I'm
feel
at
you.
less
No
than
worries.
7 hours sleep now.
Man,
but it
you
was
are
worth
fucking
it.
trooper tonight, dude.
No worries.
Fucking trooper
All right.
tonight.
I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate, being asked to come on for a topic I'm passionate about and care about, and all around,
That's
this
what's up.
platform is amazing.
I appreciate that big time, and
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
thank you for coming through. That was awesome.
And if
All
anybody
right,
wants to
so
grill me later, I'll come back later. And if anybody has questions, write them down, keep them. I'll be back another day.
that's
If you want to
it.
smack
That's
me in the
it.
face with it, I'll take it then.
That's it. Exactly. That's it. So what's gonna happen next? We're gonna roll the debate outro song and video. It'll run for about 4 minutes. Perfect time for everyone. Hit the washroom, grab a drink, stretch your legs, do whatever you got to do before the Chaos and Chill open panel begins. During that outro, I'm gonna drop a link in the chat for anyone who wants to join. Test your ideas, keep the conversation going. Anyone is welcome. Just come ready to obviously, think, question, debate, etc. And if you're going to try to come and just troll or bring personal dramas or any of this, you're just going to get muted, most likely booted really quickly. So while you're ahead with that idea, just quit. And before we run the outro, one last reminder, make sure you subscribe to both the debaters. Their links are in the description. And if you're enjoying these debates, hit subscribe to the Speakeasy channel as well. Pass it over, Step. Hit the subscribe to the Speakeasy channel as well. I said, pass it over. What are you doing?
Oh, my bad.
So you don't miss any more Swords of Reasons. Okay, this is where logic meets passion. All right, let's roll the outro, and I will see you all in a few minutes for the Chaos and Chill. And again, thank you both.
Y'all have a good night. Been a blast. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the debate. I'm going to chill out for a little bit and then get ready to go to bed. So I'm going to raid now. Thank you for suffering through this with me, because these things are a bit of a slog, but I think it was good. I'll probably go chill on a VC for a little bit while I drink some tea and wind down from all the madness. So I'm gonna go ahead and raid into. Let's go with Real Radham. So thank you all. As always, chat is the real winner, and thank you for feeding me more and more talking points to drill into this. But I think we know how that worked out toward the end. So rating out. Catch y'all next time. Peace. Well, catch you tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So peace.